Chapter 2598, 2598 Secretly Cultivating. 2598 Secretly Cultivating. The terrain of the Builder Tree mountain range was semicircular. Using the mountain range as the main focus, in the valley below, two gigantic ceiling immortal formations were set up, and they were known as the Builder Tree battlefields. The perfected immortals of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain and the Arhats of the Pure Land of Bliss competed in their respective regions. They were independent and did not interfere with one another. The elimination round in the Builder Tree battlefield was open to every perfected immortal. Participating perfected immortals would obtain a badge called the Builder Tree Badge. Once injected with true essence, the Builder Tree Badge would activate a defensive barrier that was connected to the immortal formation. No matter what danger they encountered, they would survive. An expert at the perfected immortal realm was an irreplaceable support for any sect or faction. There was no way they would allow perfected immortals to kill one another and fight with their lives for the sake of the perfected immortal ranking. That would be a self-destructive action for both the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss. That was the reason for the existence of the Builder Tree Badge. On the other hand, the Builder Tree Badge was also closely related to the final ranking. In the two Builder Tree battlefields, the top 100 perfected immortals who obtained the most Builder Tree badges would enter the final battle. There have been many competition formats for the Nine Firmament meet. However, after many attempts, this was the most fair and reasonable one. Su Zimo listened for a while. This model was similar to when he took part in the Immortal Sex election back then. The two Builder Tree battlefields were long prepared. On the side of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, a group of perfected immortal experts stood up one after another. Renowned experts such as Sword Immortal Yu Hua, Zither Immortal Meng Yao, perfected immortal Wu Feng and Chun Feng Jian would naturally not miss this opportunity. Even Yang Ruoxu was prepared to undergo a baptism of killing in the Builder Tree battlefield. The improvement of watching from the sidelines was never as great as experiencing it personally. "Sister, aren't you taking part?" When Yunzhu saw that Imo Qing did not stand up the entire time, she could not help but ask. Imo Qing hesitated. In the depths of her heart, she was not willing to participate in such a fight. Yunzhu smiled gently and persuaded, "Sister, you don't have to be so resistant. It's just a participation. It'll be best if you can be ranked in the top 100. If you can't, it's fine. There's nothing to lose." There were only 10 spots on the perfected immortal ranking. However, if one could be ranked in the top 100 of the Builder Tree battlefield, they could also obtain a chance to cultivate beneath the Builder Tree. In other words, at the Nine Firmament meet, only 200 perfected immortals were qualified to cultivate beneath the Builder Tree. This was an irresistible temptation for many perfected immortals. Even if one only managed to cultivate beneath the Builder Tree for a month, it would be equivalent to 10,000 years of effort. Furthermore, the Builder Tree only slept once every 100,000 years. This was a rare opportunity that could not be missed. "All right." Mo Qing nodded. Before long, thousands of perfected immortals from the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, including the 4 great fairies, entered the fray. Apart from some perfected immortals whose cultivation realms were too low and thought that they had no hope, most of them intended to fight in the Builder Tree battlefield. On the side of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain, tens of thousands of perfected immortals entered the fray. The situation on the side of the Pure Land of Bliss was not much different. The perfected immortals and arhats wielded their Builder Tree badges and were randomly teleported to various parts of the Builder Tree battlefields. A massive battle between perfected immortals had officially begun. Su Zimo took a rough look. Chess Immortal Junyu of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, Qin Su of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain, Lin Lei of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain, Fairy Jia Lan of the Verdant Firmament Immortal Domain, Zhuo Wuchen and Yun Mubai of the White Firmament Immortal Domain. All of these hot candidates on the perfected immortal ranking were extremely domineering. The moment the battle royale began, they did not choose to form a team with others. Instead, they pushed forth alone and no one could stop them. Among the 4 great fairies, apart from Chess Immortal Junyu, Zither Immortal Meng Yao and Book Immortal Yun Zhu relied on their own methods as well to snatch the Builder Tree badges continuously and smoothly. Mo Qing did not like to fight, nor did she take the initiative to look for opponents. Under normal circumstances, it would be difficult for her to obtain enough Builder Tree badges if she participated in this battle royale. However, there were always perfected immortals who thought that painting immortal Mo Qing was the weakest among the four great fairies and took the initiative to attack her. News of Mo Qing tearing the painting book at the Divine Firmament Immortal meet had long spread through the 9 Firmament Immortal domain. Many perfected immortals instinctively felt that Mo Qing's combat strength had decreased after losing the painting book and was not much of a threat. However, none of them expected that Mo Qing would advance in her cultivation realm with the help of the Divine Ghost Immortal Fiend diagram and gain new insights into the Tao of painting. Even without the painting book, Mo Qing's combat strength was top tier among perfected immortals. It was just that she rarely fought against others, creating the misconception that the painting immortal was weak. With the perfected immortals that came knocking on her door, the number of Builder Tree badges on Mo Qing's body increased continuously. Yang Ruoxu was only a convergence perfected immortal after all. It did not take long for him to be defeated by a hollow nether perfected immortal within and was unfortunately eliminated. Be it the 9 Firmament Immortal domain or the Pure Land of Bliss, almost all the cultivators' attention was focused on the 2 Builder Tree battlefields below. As the battle progressed, everyone discussed and commented. Su Zimo merely looked at it for a while before calming down. He secretly extended the connection of his Green Lotus true body underground. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness followed the thick roots and gradually arrived at the true form of the Builder Tree. At that moment, it was as though he had transformed into a creation Green Lotus and took root here. His roots intertwined with the roots of the Builder Tree and began to absorb the life force of the latter. Su Zimo did not dare to absorb it too quickly. Firstly, he was worried that he would alarm the Builder Tree. Secondly, he was afraid of attracting attention. Apart from a group of perfected immortal experts, there were also many immortal kings holding down the fort at the 9 Firmament meet after all. All of these immortal kings had sharp senses. If anything happened, there was a high chance that some of them would be suspicious. As time passed by, the combat on the Builder Tree battlefield below intensified. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd from time to time. Su Zimo did not care, nor was he interested. He continued to absorb and refine the Builder Tree in secret to strengthen the Green Lotus true body. In just a day, he could clearly sense that the Green Lotus true body had received an extremely obvious improvement. If he were to cultivate at this speed, the Green Lotus true body might be able to grow to the peak of grade 11 within a few days. As the Green Lotus true body grew, his cultivation realm would increase as well and he would reach the peak of a grade 9 heaven immortal. Su Zimo cultivated in silence and absorbed and refined the life force energy of the Builder Tree. Although he had been suppressing it the entire time, he could not help but emit a unique aura that belonged to the Flora race. This aura was mixed with the Builder Tree and Creation Green Lotus. Although perfected immortals might not be able to sense it, it could not be hidden from some Immortal King experts. The expression of Immortal King Qin Yang changed, as though he sensed something. At the same time, on the side of the Green Firmament Immortal domain, Immortal Queen Ling Long sensed something unusual about Su Zimo. She hurriedly conjured a secret skill through the endless void in secret, creating a concealment that could hide the heavenly secrets around Su Zimo. Immortal King Qin Yang glanced sideways and surveyed Su Zimo's side. When he did not find anything, he frowned and retracted his gaze. Chapter 2599, 2599 Thoughts of the Prime Body. 2599 Thoughts of the Prime Body. 5 days later. The elimination round of the 2 Builder Tree battlefields was almost over. On the side of the Divine Firmament Immortal domain, Chess Immortal Junyu was far in the lead and had the second most number of Builder Tree badges. Next was Sword Immortal Yuhua. Yun Zhu, Mo Qing and Meng Yao were all in the top 100. There were only 8 perfected immortals from the Divine Firmament Immortal domain in the top 100, half of them were the four great fairies alone. Fairy Jialan, Zhuo Wuchen and the other popular candidates mentioned previously were among the top 100 as well. Prince Qin Su of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain was the one with the most number of Builder Tree badges. The competition for the perfected immortal ranking this time round is way too intense. By the looks of it, there are at least 3 people who have a chance of obtaining the title of Supreme Perfected Immortal. Divine Firmament Immortal Domains Chess Immortal Junyu, Grand Firmament Immortal Domains Qin Su and Green Firmament Immortal Domains Lin Lei. In my opinion, Zhuo Wuchen of the White Firmament Immortal Domain has a chance as well and is not much weaker than the 3 of them. These top-tier experts must have definitely held back with their trump cards in the elimination round. It's hard to say who will win the final competition. For the past few days, many cultivators on the peak of the Builder Tree discussed. Even some immortal kings conversed with one another and commented on the perfected immortals who were participating in the battle below. Compared to the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain, there was evidently no ambiguity about the elimination round at the side of the Pure Land of Bliss. The rank 1 of the elimination round was Shi Wunyan. He was far ahead of others in the number of Builder Tree badges obtained. For the past 5 days, Su Zimo did not watch the battle much. He absorbed and refined the life force energy of the Builder Tree and cultivated continuously. The Green Lotus true body was growing rapidly and his cultivation realm advanced by leaps and bounds. He was close to the peak of a grade 9 heaven immortal. Of course, even if he cultivated to the peak of a grade 9 heaven immortal here and touched the barrier of the perfected 1 realm, Su Zimo would not be able to break through here. The advancement of the Green Lotus true body to the perfected 1 realm was no small matter. This was not merely an increase in his cultivation realm with the condensation of a Tao fruit to become a perfected immortal. At the same time, it meant that the Green Lotus true body would grow to grade 12. The creation Green Lotus would ripen completely and would be at its peak. At that time, nobody knew what changes would happen. Right now, there were many immortal kings surrounding him. If Su Zimo broke through here, the bloodline of the creation Green Lotus would definitely be exposed. It would be equivalent to committing suicide. There were so many immortal king experts from various sects and factions that even the sect master of the academy might not be able to protect him. Furthermore, the Dharmic Tao cultivated by the Green Lotus true body was complex. He had cultivated the taboo mystic classics of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Taos. There was also a powerful cultivation technique from the demon Tao such as the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Under such circumstances, it would become extremely difficult and complicated to condense a Tao fruit and break through. Without a good opportunity, it would be difficult to break through. After the elimination round was over, the cultivators returned to their sects and rested for the night. The final ranking battle would be held the next day to determine the 10 spots on the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings. Avicii. The martial Tao prime body opened his eyes and the purple Tao fire in them gradually retracted. He snapped out of his endless deduction of the Dharmic Tao and exhaled gently. He had benefited immensely from his deduction this time round. He had already comprehended the crux of the martial Tao Dharmic formulation for the next realm. However, there were still some details that he could not figure out yet. Furthermore, the fog ahead had already dissipated gradually and the martial Tao prime body could vaguely see the future. The Dharmic Tao of the human race was passed down through the immortal, fiend, and Buddhist Taos. Demons had the demon Tao. There were 10,000 Dharmic Taos in the 10,000 races. However, at the end of the day, all Dharmic Taos would converge into one and lead to the same goal. It might be the same for the martial Tao. The end of the Tao was always similar. No matter what Dharmic Tao one cultivated, they would eventually head to the same shore. He could not confirm the next realm of the martial Tao for the time being. However, in this seclusion, a sudden thought flashed through the mind of the martial Tao prime body. It was an extremely bold thought that might even result in a slim chance of survival. However, once he succeeded, with that inspiration, he might be able to create a Tao unique to him that no one could surpass or replicate. To a certain extent, the Dharmic Tao of the martial Tao was no different from the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Taos and did not exceed the restraints of this world. However, his existence was a variable to begin with, and he was the founder of the martial Tao. His body smelted thousands of divine powers and secret skills and nurtured all sutras. That was the reason why the martial Tao could release such terrifying combat strength in his hands. His disciples, Baiming Shui and Carefree, were not the only ones who could cultivate the martial Tao. All living beings in the world could and ascend to become immortals. The martial Tao did not belong to him alone. However, if he could verify this thought of his and synthesize the fact that he was a variable together with the foundation of the martial Tao, he might be able to break through some sort of restriction of the laws and step into an unknown, unfathomable and untouchable world. From the beginning, the martial Tao prime body had been trying to surpass everything. He did not only want to surpass others, but also himself. During this period of seclusion cultivation, the martial Tao prime body cultivated his Tao body while deducing the dermic Tao. The true martial Tao body was about to reach the perfected realm. On the 6th day of the 9 firmament meet, the final ranking battle of the perfected immortal ranking and Arhat ranking officially began. The cultivators on the 2 ranking lists were divided into the 2 battlefields and fought in pairs. After each round, the cultivators would be given enough time to rest. Therefore, the ranking battle had to last for 2 days. The first match of the perfected immortal ranking was Qin Su against a grade 9 perfected immortal of the purple firmament immortal domain. Although this grade 9 perfected immortal was not weak, he had no chance against Prince Qin Su. He admitted defeat in less than 10 moves. The second match was Jun Yu against a grade 9 perfected immortal of the verdant firmament immortal domain. Jun Yu won with ease as well. The third match was between Lin Lei and Mo Qing. Mo Qing did not take part in the battle and admitted defeat. Many cultivators thought that painting immortal Mo Qing made this choice because she knew that she had no chance of winning. Only Su Zimo, Yun Zhu, and the others knew that Mo Qing was merely unwilling to fight. For her, it was enough if she could enter the top 100 and obtain a chance to cultivate beneath the builder tree. Su Zimo caught a few matches casually before calming down to cultivate in secret. The 6th day passed. The top 50 spots were already decided. Among them, on the side of the divine firmament immortal domain, apart from painting immortal Mo Qing who withdrew at the start, the other 3 of the 4 great fairies were ranked in the top 50. Sword immortal Yu Hua was also far in the lead. Everyone knew that the ranking battle on the 7th day would be even more intense. The final day was the clash between the top perfected immortal experts. After resting for the night, the ranking battle began early the next morning. The remaining 50 perfected immortals on the side of the 9 firmament immortal domain fought once more. The battle was unprecedentedly intense and the cultivators watching felt their hearts skip a beat as their blood boiled. In between, 2 perfected immortals even exhausted their final trump cards and fought to a draw. On the peak of the builder tree, among the vast number of cultivators, there was probably only a single person who did not take the ranking battle of the perfected immortal ranking and Arhat ranking to heart. Instead, he made use of this opportunity to secretly cultivate and grow rapidly. Chapter 2600, 2600 Astral Imprisonment. 2600 Astral Imprisonment. 7th day of the 9 firmament meet. Afternoon, the ranking battle for the perfected immortal ranking and Arhat ranking had already entered the final phase. On the side of the pure land of bliss, Shi Wunyan won everything and no one could stop him. On the side of the 9 firmament immortal domain, chess immortal Jun Yu, Prince Qin Su, Lin Lei and Zhuo Wuchen were far in the lead with complete victories. Jun Yu's chess Dao, Qin Su's secret skills of the emperor, Lin Lei's halberd and Zhuo Wuchen's sword Dao left deep impressions on the cultivators present. If nothing went wrong, the supreme perfected immortal of this generation would be born among them. The next battle was between zither immortal Meng Yao and Lin Lei. Meng Yao's Dao was through her music. It would be fine if she was up against ordinary cultivators. However, against a top-tier perfected immortal like Lin Lei, it was difficult for her dermic Dao to unleash its power head-on. Meng Yao's zither sound could not affect Lin Lei's Dao heart at all. Lin Lei wielded his halberd with a torrential aura and defeated zither immortal Meng Yao. Thereafter, Book Immortal Yunju went against Prince Qin Su. Unsurprisingly, Yunju was defeated in this battle. Even so, Yunju's performance attracted praise. Right from the beginning, Yunju seemed to be holding back. Although she was defeated in the end, she did not seem wretched at all and retreated with grace. Many immortal kings secretly speculated that the combat strength of Book Immortal Yunju was most likely sufficient for her to be ranked on the perfected immortal ranking. It was merely unfortunate that she had a bad ranking for the elimination round, causing her to have to face Prince Qin so prematurely and be knocked out. Evening. On the side of the Pure Land of Bliss, the ranking battle for the Arhat ranking was the first to end. The Arhat ranking of this generation was out. As everyone had expected, the top of the Arhat ranking with the title of Supreme was Shi Wunyan from the Pure Land of Bliss's Mount Meru. Shi Wunyan won everything along the way, and furthermore, they were landslides. There was no doubt towards his conferment as Supreme. Rank 1 of the Arhat ranking, Shi Wunyan. Rank 2, Wu Gaoni. Rank 3, Wu. Rank 4, Su Ba. Rank 5, Tian Mu. Rank 6, Ding Li. Rank 7, Bu Dong. Rank 8, Luo Du. Rank 9, Pemo. Rank 10, Daren. As for the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain, the ranking battle was already coming to an end. The first 2 battles were Qin Su against Zhuo Wuchen and Jun Yu against Lin Lei. Qin Su and Jun Yu won respectively. This meant that it would either be Qin Su or Jun Yu who would be the supreme perfected immortal. The current battle was between Lin Lei and Zhuo Wuchen to fight for the 3rd spot on the perfected immortal ranking. After an intense fight, Lin Lei won after a tragic battle. Zhuo Wuchen was not fated to be in the top 3 of the perfected immortal ranking and was defeated. Lin Lei dragged his injured body back to the Green Firmament Immortal Domain. Lin Luo went up to him immediately and consoled him, "Brother, congratulations. Mother was praising you earlier on. It's already not bad for you to be 3rd. Lin Lei shook his head gently and smiled bitterly. He was naturally dissatisfied with being rank 3 on the perfected immortal ranking. However, there was Chess Immortal Jun Yu and Prince Qin Su in this generation. Indeed, he could not defeat them. Lin Lei rubbed Lin Luo's head gently and said earnestly, "Sister, look at Su Zimo. Don't think that he's very strong just because there's no one who can match him in the Heaven Immortal Realm. At the perfected immortal realm, there are many people who are stronger than him. One can only be called a true paragon after advancing to the perfected one realm. His current achievements are nothing." Lin Luo pouted. "Brother, how do you know that he will fail after entering the perfected one realm? In my opinion, his potential is much greater than yours." "Humph." Lin Lei was a little disdainful. "He's only comparable to me if he's even qualified to partake in the competition for the perfected immortal ranking and can obtain rank 3. Layer, you're still arrogant." Immortal Queen Ling Long shook her head gently. "Up till this point of your cultivation, you thought that you were invincible among your peers. However, you suffered an unexpectedly huge loss in Langfeng City. Even after you have just suffered another setback at the perfected immortal ranking, you're not intending to reflect upon yourself?" Lin Lei naturally did not dare to refute Immortal Queen Ling Long's reprimand and merely lowered his head in silence. The next battle was the true center of attraction. Prince Qin Su was up against Chess Immortal Jun Yu. Even the monks of the Pure Land of Bliss gathered to watch the battle. "Zimo, who do you think will win?" Yunju glanced sideways and asked. Su Zimo was still cultivating and did not seem to have heard or noticed anything. "Zimo?" Yunju was worried when she saw Su Zimo in a strange state. Although his eyes were on the battlefield, he seemed to be in a trance with his mind elsewhere. She could not help but touch him gently as she called out once more. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo woke up from his cultivation state. In the 7 days of the 9 firmament meet, he cultivated with the help of the builder tree, and the green lotus true body grew at a terrifying speed. It had already reached the peak of a grade 9 heaven immortal. However, he did not sense the barrier of the perfected one realm. If he wanted to break through, he would have to consolidate his comprehension and find a suitable opportunity. Now that Yunju had awakened him, he had no intention of continuing cultivating for the time being. He was prepared to watch the final battle of the perfected immortal ranking. "Are you alright?" Yunju asked. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. Recalling Yunju's question earlier on, he said in a low voice, "In my opinion, Junyu has a higher chance. If it was 1,000 years ago, Junyu and Qin Su might have been on par. But now that Junyu has obtained the inheritance of immortal Queen Ling Long, it was an extremely obvious increase to her combat strength." As dusk descended, a huge battle broke out. The moment the two perfected immortal experts attacked, they did not test the waters and released their strongest trump cards. In a fight of this level, one could lose if they were careless. Junyu held the chessboard in her hands and carried the starry skies on her back. The entire battlefield seemed to have turned into a chessboard as she stood outside, manipulating the fates of each chess piece. Even Qin Su was merely a chess piece in her hands. Qin Su's methods were extremely terrifying as well. The Emperor's bloodline was incomparably domineering as he forcefully released his bloodline phenomenon. It was as though an iron-blooded army was gathered behind him and a single order shattered the chess game. The combat intensity of both parties increased continuously and they even released Essence Spirit's secret skills. Before long, it reached its climax and victory could be decided at any moment. Suddenly, Qin Su touched his glabella with his finger and took out a scarlet ancient book, creating another self right in front of everyone. The two of them looked identical even in terms of cultivation realm. It was the Grand Pure Jade Manual from one of the taboo mystic classics, the Three Pure Ones Jade Manual. The crowd stirred when they saw that. Qin Su alone was already enough to fight chess immortal Junyu to a draw. How would Junyu defend against the combined forces of two Qin Ces? Back in the battle between Su Zimo and Yunting, it was after Su Zimo released his primeval body that Yunting was completely defeated. And now, Qin Su used the Grand Pure Jade Manual to condense a morality body. Although the physique of the morality body was ordinary, its spirit consciousness was incomparably strong and could even release Essence Spirit's secret skills. On the battlefield, Junyu's expression was calm. She was not flustered when she saw Qin Su release his morality body. "Since that's the case, I'll let you witness my capabilities." Junyu conjured hand seals repeatedly with both hands and her spirit consciousness was expended immensely. An incomparably tremendous might descended as though the world was locked and restricted. Pointing at Qin Su, Junyu said softly, "Astral imprisonment. Peerless divine power, astral imprisonment." Chapter 2601, 2601 Perfect End. 2601 Perfect End. When they saw that, the cultivators were shocked. A glint flashed through the eyes of the immortal kings as well. How difficult was it to comprehend peerless divine powers? Opportunities, talent and comprehension were all factors that could not be lacking. In the current heavenly world, Junyu was the only perfected immortal who had comprehended a peerless divine power. Even among the immortal king experts present, none of them could comprehend a peerless divine power back then. It was no exaggeration to say that the rarity of peerless divine powers was comparable to the taboo mystic classics. Furthermore, ever since the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings were established, perfected immortals who could comprehend peerless divine powers were invincible among their peers. Without exception, all of them were conferred the title of Supreme Perfected Immortal. The moment Junyu released her peerless divine power, astral imprisonment, there was no doubt about the outcome of this battle. In terms of strength, peerless divine powers could suppress perfected immortals almost completely. Immortal King Long Knight of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain turned to look at Immortal King Qin Yang and said, "To think that the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain would give birth to such a monster incarnate. Furthermore, she's a woman. How shocking. It's indeed rare." Immortal King Qin Yang nodded slightly. The last woman that shocked many immortals was Immortal Queen Ling Long of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain. Immortal Queen Ling Long came from the lower worlds and rose all the way, even becoming an immortal queen in the end. This matter caused a huge stir in the nine firmament immortal domain. Immortal King Long Knight's gaze shifted and swept past Immortal Queen Ling Long in a seemingly unintentional manner. In order to comprehend astral imprisonment, one has to possess extremely high attainments in the dermic Taos of space and time. From the spatial dermic Tao of this woman, she seems to be guided by another powerful master. Immortal King Long Knight had a major grotto heaven and was considered a supreme immortal king whose cultivation realm was even above Immortal Queen Ling Long naturally. He could tell that Jun Yu carried some dermic Tao traces of Immortal Queen Ling Long. In reality, back at the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet, Jun Yu had not comprehended this peerless divine power. It was all thanks to the 3 days she spent playing chess with Su Zimo in the room. On the 3rd day, she witnessed the entire process of Su Zimo resolving the 8th Ling Long Zugzwang and gained some inspiration and insights. She fused it together with her personal dermic Tao to comprehend that peerless divine power. Immortal King Long Knight said, "In my opinion, there's no need for this fight to continue. Chess Immortal Jun Yu should be the victor." "Exactly." Immortal King Qin Yang nodded as well. Qin Su was a prince after all and had a noble status with the backing of an emperor. There was no need for him to lose his life for the title of Supreme Perfected Immortal. On the battlefield. After Qin Su released his morality body, he realized that he and his morality body could not move at all. Time was not the only thing imprisoned, space as well. Unless they had the strength of another peerless divine power, there was no way perfected immortals could break free from astral imprisonment. The moment the peerless divine power descended, the battlefield suddenly turned silent. Even the air froze and all sound vanished without a trace. In front of Jun Yu, Qin Su was like fish on a chopping board that could be slaughtered at will. With an indifferent expression, Jun Yu flicked her finger gently. A black chess piece tore through the void and flew slowly towards Qin Su's glabella. Qin Su watched helplessly in shock and anger as the black chess piece flew towards him. This was the power of a peerless divine power. On the other side, a hint of fear flashed through Shi Wunyan's eyes when he saw that. He was already the most outstanding monk in the Buddhist monasteries in the past 100,000 years. Even so, he had not comprehended a peerless divine power. To be precise, the supreme divine power he controlled had already touched the threshold of peerless divine power but had yet to be cultivated successfully. Right then, 2 incomparably domineering powers surged in and broke through the restricted space on the battlefield. Under the instigation of Immortal King Long Knight and Immortal King Qin Yang, Immortal King Pu Xian and Zen Master Hui Wen attacked at the same time to save Qin Su and forcefully end the battle. Qin Su regained his freedom and looked at the black chess piece that was right in front of him. Instinctively, he retreated a few steps and looked at Jun Yu opposite him, cursing internally, "Crazy woman." He had a life-saving item given to him by his father and Jun Yu would definitely not be able to kill him. However, the fear of being rendered completely immobile and incapable of controlling anything still gave him a sense of trepidation. Immortal King Pu Xian smiled gently and declared, "Both of you are rare paragons of the 9 firmament immortal domain. Since the outcome has been decided, there's no need for you to fight to the death." Qin Su's expression was terrible. He harumphed coldly and flicked his sleeves before leaving. The competition for the perfected immortal ranking came to an official end here. Rank 1 of the perfected immortal ranking, Chess Immortal Jun Yu of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 2, Qin Su of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 3, Lin Lei of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 4, Zhuo Wuchen of the White Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 5, Fairy Jia Lan of the Verdant Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 6, Yun Mubai of the White Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 7, Ding Yuan of the Purple Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 8, Shi Gu of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 9, Yu Hua of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. Rank 10, Fairy Ling Huang of the Elixir Firmament Immortal Domain. The perfected immortal ranking this time round was rather special. Not only did 3 fairies occupy 3 of the 10 spots, the Supreme Perfected Immortal was a fairy as well. Ever since the Perfected Immortal ranking was established, this was the first time a fairy had been conferred the title of Supreme. Furthermore, there was no Perfected Immortal from the Jade Firmament Immortal domain on the Perfected Immortal ranking. In the battle in Langfeng City, the 5 city lords of the Jade Firmament Immortal domain who had a chance of contending for the Perfected Immortal ranking were all killed by Desolate Marshal of the Fiend domain, causing them to suffer immense losses. The 2 gigantic ranking lists of the Perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings were hung on the Builder tree. There were a total of 20 Perfected Immortals and every single name shone with a bedazzling glow. Those 20 were the strongest and most outstanding paragons and monster incarnates of the 9 Firmament Immortal domain and pure land of bliss for the past 100,000 years. In the past 100,000 years, the 9 Firmament Immortal domain and pure land of bliss had given birth to countless Perfected Immortals. However, only those 20 were qualified to leave their names on the Perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings. All the cultivators looked at the names on the Perfected Immortal ranking with reverence and envy. It was definitely a supreme honor in their lives to be able to leave their names on it. Before long, the names of the 20 Perfected Immortals would spread through the 2 domains and the entire heavenly world, entering the books of history. The Immortal King experts of the 9 Firmament Immortal domain and pure land of bliss heaved a sigh of relief as well. There were no accidents for the past 7 days. The Fiend domain was rather quiet. Now that the Perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings were complete, it was time for the top 100 Perfected Immortals of the 2 domains to head to the Builder tree to cultivate. The other Perfected Immortals could cultivate on the peak of the Builder tree as well. The heaven and earth essence chi here was much richer than the spirit meridians of other immortal mountains. At this point, the 9 firmament meet had concluded almost perfectly. Prior to this, the Emperor's and Immortal King experts of the 9 Firmament Immortal domain and pure land of bliss had been worried about one thing. They were worried that there might be any strange activity from the Fiend domain. After all, 2 peerless fiends had reappeared in the world in recent years. Each of them was someone that cultivators of the 2 domains were wary of. Nobody knew if the Fiend domain would do anything at the 9 Firmament meet. Now, it seemed like they were thinking too much. Even after the 2 ranking lists ended, the enthusiasm of the cultivators did not dissipate. The Perfected Immortals who participated in the 2 ranking lists returned to the peak of the Builder tree to rest and wait for the next morning to officially head to cultivate beneath the Builder tree. The 9 Firmament meet seemed calm and peaceful. At that moment, all the immortals and monks, including the Immortal Kings and Heavenly Kings, could not have imagined what was about to unfold the next day. Chapter 2602, 2602 Out of Seclusion. 2602 Out of Seclusion. 8 days after the 9 Firmament meet, the sun rose and daybreak arrived. Avicii was still dark and sinister. In the darkness, a figure could vaguely be seen sitting in a lotus position motionlessly, as though he had fused with the hell. Suddenly, the figure released purple lights that purged away the surrounding darkness, revealing a face with a silver mask. It was the Martial Dao Prime Body. A purple halo surrounded the body of the Martial Dao Prime Body and runes circulated on it in a mysterious and powerful manner. A moment later, the purple halo suddenly expanded and enveloped the gigantic secret chamber. Before long, the purple halo retracted rapidly and entered the body of the Martial Dao Prime Body. The Martial Dao Prime Body stood up with 2 purple flames burning in his eyes. His aura had already reached its peak. A perfected true Martial Dao body. When he was at greater mastery of the true martial realm, the Martial Dao Prime Body could suppress ordinary minor Grotto Heaven Immortal Kings barehanded in melee combat. However, if an Immortal King expert released his minor Grotto Heaven, it would be difficult for the Martial Dao Prime Body to suppress him. Back in the Fiend Cave, the reason why the Martial Dao Prime Body could kill a few Fiend Kings was because that was the tomb of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse and no Grotto Heavens could be released. But now that the true Martial Dao Body was perfected, the Martial Dao Prime Body speculated that he could probably crush minor Grotto Heavens with his physique and blood chi alone. In reality, the Martial Dao Prime Body had yet to advance to the next realm of the Martial Dao that corresponded to the Grotto Heaven realm. However, in terms of strength, the perfected true martial Dao body of the martial Dao prime body could already suppress minor grotto heaven immortal kings. Of course, if he was up against supreme immortal kings with major grotto heavens, it would still be difficult for the martial Dao prime body to defend once the grotto heavens were released. The difference between a minor grotto heaven and a major grotto heaven seemed like a single word. However, the difference in strength was immense. The martial Dao prime body left Avicii and arrived above Tai Wei Mountain, punching the void casually. Creak. The void trembled and cracks appeared. Given the current strength of the martial Dao prime body, he could tear through the void at any moment and teleport a long distance even without the help of the Hell Suppression Tripod. Initially, this was a power that only Grotto Heaven realm experts could control. The martial Dao prime body tore through the void and entered the spatial tunnel, teleporting back to Tianhuang's sect. As though he sensed something, Heavenly Wolf's ears twitched and he opened his eyes warily. He saw the martial Dao prime body descending above Tianhuang's sect. Everyone, please head to the Tianhuang Hall. I've got something to discuss. The voice of the martial Dao prime body entered the ears of Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath and the others with extreme precision. The 7 Emotions Fiend generals exited seclusion at the same time. Tianhuang Hall. What? When he heard the decision of the martial Dao prime body, Heavenly Wolf was suddenly shocked and shrieked, "You're going to the 9 Firmament meet?" Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath and the others frowned with grim expressions as well. It won't just be the immortals of the 9 Firmament immortal domain at the 9 Firmament meet. The monks of the Pure Land of Bliss will be present as well. The Thunder Monarch said in a deep voice, "I heard that the 2 domains even sent more than 20 supreme immortal kings and more than 100 ordinary immortal kings for this 9 Firmament meet. They have a large force and they're not taking things lightly." The Thunder Monarch had a blood feud with the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom. His son, daughter-in-law and even his best friend, perfected Immortal Burial Knight, were killed by the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom. However, the Thunder Monarch had not made any moves all these years. That was because the Thunder Monarch knew that given the current strength of Tianhuang's sect, they could not fight against the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom. Right now, he only had a minor Grotto Heaven and could not fight against King Gene who had a major Grotto Heaven. Furthermore, the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom was located in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. If any faction of the Fiend Domain attacked the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom, Divine Firmament Palace would not sit by idly. Even the other sects and factions of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain would most likely stand out. The Thunder Monarch knew that Tianhuang's sect was only at its nascent stage. In terms of foundation and strength, they were far inferior to heaven-grade factions such as the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom, let alone the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. And now, by heading to the 9 Firmament meet, the martial Dao prime body was not only going against the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, but the entire 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and even the Pure Land of Bliss. This was no different from striking a stone with an egg. "It's fine." The martial Dao prime body said, "I had another breakthrough in my seclusion this time round." Everyone was invigorated and delighted. The Thunder Monarch scanned the martial Dao prime body with his spirit consciousness and revealed a puzzled expression. He could not tell the cultivation realm of the martial Dao prime body. However, he could vaguely sense that the latter had yet to control the power of a Grotto Heaven. In other words, the martial Dao prime body had yet to reach the Grotto Heaven realm. "Can you defeat an immortal king?" The Thunder Monarch attempted to ask. The martial Dao prime body said frankly, "Ordinary immortal kings are not a problem for me, but I can't win against supreme immortal kings." Wah! The Thunder Monarch hesitated. At the 9 Firmament meet, there were more than 20 supreme immortal kings alone. However, when he saw the resolute gaze of the martial Dao prime body, as though he had made up his mind, he did not persuade further and said in a deep voice, "I'll go down and make arrangements to gather the army and prepare to head over together." "There's no need." The martial Dao prime body shook his head gently. "I'll just bring 2 people with me to the 9 Firmament meet this time round. Qiu Siluo and Gu Tongyu." Qiu Siluo's heart skipped a beat as she suddenly recalled something. Back when the martial Dao Prime Body heard that Zither Immortal Meng Yao sent people to hunt them down in the Fiend Domain, he expressed his intention of standing up for them. It said that the 4 great fairies were all at the 9 firmament meet. Now that the martial Dao Prime Body wanted to bring them along, it was definitely to take revenge for them. Gu Tongyu had a melancholic gaze and exchanged glances with Chiu Siluo. It was clear that he had guessed this as well. Chiu Siluo said hurriedly, "Sect Master, both of us understand your intentions. However, you must not put yourself at risk for us." The martial Dao Prime Body waved it off and interrupted Chiu Siluo. "Your matter is only one of the reasons. I have another motive for heading to the 9 firmament meet." "I'll go too," Yen Beichen said coldly. He did not ask the martial Dao Prime Body why the latter wanted to head there, nor did he intend to. He merely knew that no matter what the martial Dao Prime Body did or how strong his opponents were, he would choose to fight alongside the martial Dao Prime Body. "There's no way I'm going to miss such a lively event." Demonist Ji chuckled. "Back in the Fiend Cave, both of us managed to escape death. What's there to fear for a mere 9 firmament meet?" Amitba. Ming Zhen chanted the Buddhist proclamation softly. "I'll go too." Heavenly Wolf was extremely resistant and was initially feigning ignorance at a corner. At that moment, when he saw everyone in the hall stand out, he could not help but roll his eyes. "You guys just love to put on strong fronts. When the time comes, you won't even know how you're killed." Heavenly Wolf cursed internally before probing, "Should I stay back and guard our base?" The martial Dao Prime Body did not give Heavenly Wolf any choices. In a flash, he rode on the ladder's back. "All right, everyone, follow me. Just watch from the side. Nobody is to attack without my orders. Brother Feng, please take care of the others when the time comes." The martial Dao Prime Body added. Among everyone, the Thunder Monarch was the only one who could protect himself since he was already at the Grotto Heaven realm. After everything was arranged, the martial Dao Prime Body brought the 7 Emotions Fiend Generals and left Tianhuang's sect stealthily, heading in the direction of the Builder Tree. Chapter 2603, Chapter 2603, Threat. Chapter 2603, Threat. 8 days after the 9 firmament meet, at the peak of the Builder Tree. The morning light shone slowly on the Builder Tree and enveloped the perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings. The names of the 20 paragons on the rankings shone brightly, representing supreme glory that countless cultivators looked forward to. From this day forth, only the top 100 cultivators of the perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings respectively were qualified to cultivate beneath the Builder Tree. Most cultivators could only stay on the peak of the Builder Tree. The 20 paragons on the perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings had already recovered after a night of rest. They were invigorated and stood up one after another. Rank 2 of the perfected Immortal ranking, Qin Su, walked straight towards the side of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. Initially, Yun Zhu was about to head to the Builder Tree. When she saw Qin Su walking over, she could not help but frown slightly. She glanced at Su Zimo, who was not far away, and stopped in her tracks. Sensing something, Jun Yu stopped as well. Qin Su passed through the crowd and stood in front of Su Zimo, looking down at the latter, who was sitting on the ground. "Su Zimo!" Qin Su called out. Su Zimo was resting with his eyes closed. He had long sensed Qin Su's arrival but ignored him. It was only when Qin Su spoke that he opened his eyes slowly. He did not get up and merely asked indifferently, "Is there anything?" A cold glint flashed through the depths of Qin Su's eyes. As a prince, what sort of status did he possess? Furthermore, he was a perfected immortal who had just obtained rank 2 on the perfected immortal ranking. Yet, this heaven immortal from the lower worlds before him did not even stand up to greet him. Qin Su recovered quickly and smiled. "Su Zimo, I'm here this time round to make a deal with you. For you, this will be something that will help you gain a meteoric rise." Su Zimo's expression was unchanged, as though he was unmoved. Through his spirit perception, he could sense the hostility in the depths of Qin Su's heart, although the latter was smiling. As a prince, Qin Su came from a noble background and had a powerful bloodline. He looked down on cultivators from the lower worlds from the bottom of his heart. Although it seemed like he was discussing a deal with Su Zimo, there was a hint of arrogance in his tone. Instead, it seemed like he was giving alms to Su Zimo. Qin Su said, "I'll get straight to the point. As long as you're willing to offer the pure jade manual, you'll be able to gain the friendship of the Qin family. No matter what happens in the future, you can look for me at Grand Firmament Palace. Of course, if you choose to leave Heaven and Earth Academy and join Grand Firmament Palace, I'll consider it as well. In fact, I can take you in as a disciple and teach you personally. You might even get the chance to cultivate the Dermic Tao of the Grand Pure Jade Manual." Su Zimo sneered internally. Qin Su wanted him to hand over the Pure Jade Manual with just a promise. Not interested. Su Zimo rejected without hesitation. Qin Su's expression darkened. Narrowing his gaze slightly, he said slowly, "You should know that I'm bent on getting my hands on the Pure Jade Manual in your possession. There are many ways for me to deal with you. You had better cherish this chance that I'm giving you, or it'll be too late for regrets." Qin Su was no longer concealing his motives and was even openly threatening him. "What are you trying to do?" Yun Zhu could not take it anymore. She stood in front of Su Zimo and mocked. "As a prince and a perfected immortal, how dare you threaten a heaven? Immortal? Do you have any shame? Heaven and Earth Academy is not invisible, you know." Mo Qing stood out as well. Turning around, Jun Yu came before Qin Su with a cold gaze. "Qin Su, do you want to continue fighting? If you have the guts, don't get the immortal kings to save you this time round." In the blink of an eye, the three fairies stood out. One of them was even rank 1 of the perfected immortal ranking this time round, the supreme perfected immortal, Jun Yu. The pressure on Qin Su increased exponentially. After a moment of silence, Qin Su shrugged his shoulders and suddenly smiled. "It's just a casual remark. Why are you guys taking it so seriously?" With that said, Qin Su turned and walked towards the builder tree. On the side of the pure land of bliss, Shi Wunyan looked in Su Zimo's direction deeply. Qin Su was not the only one. Shi Wunyan had noticed Su Zimo as well. The Great Mount Meru seal was a secret skill exclusive to Mount Meru of the pure land of bliss. Su Zimo obtained the dermic formulation of the secret skill and was able to cultivate the Great Mount Meru seal to such an extent, it was clear that he had obtained the legacy of an accomplished monk of the Buddhist monasteries. Since it was a legacy of the Buddhist monasteries, he should be the one most qualified to inherit it. The small commotion here calmed down before long. The 100 perfected immortals and 100 arhats moved one after another and arrived beneath the builder tree under countless envious gazes. After everyone sat down, a fairy from the Elixir Firmament Immortal Domain stood out and smiled gently. "There's plenty of time. There's no need for everyone to be in a hurry to cultivate. I'm good at tea and can serve a cup of fragrant tea for everyone." "All right." Shi Gu, rank 8 of the perfected immortal ranking, burst into laughter. "I've long heard that Fairy Luo Hua's tea brewing skills are unparalleled. To think that we would be lucky enough to have a taste of it today." Qin Su, Sword Immortal Yu Hua and the others nodded as well. Shi Wunyan and the other arhats did not reject the immortal tea as well. Fairy Luo Hua smiled gently and took out a tea set that she had prepared long ago from her storage bag, brewing tea skillfully. The boiling spirit spring was injected with fresh tea leaves. It was misty and the fragrance of the tea wafted into one's nose, refreshing one's mind. The people before them, especially the 20 paragons on the perfected immortal and arhat rankings, would be the future of the 9 firmament immortal domain and pure land of bliss. If nothing went wrong, there was a high chance that the paragons on the 2 ranking lists would have a high chance of entering the Grotto Heaven realm to become immortal kings. For many people, this was a rare opportunity for them to build their networks. It was clear that Fairy Luo Hua was prepared for this. She wanted to get closer to everyone present, especially the paragons on the 2 ranking lists. Fairy Luohua handed the Brood Immortal Tea to the 20 paragons on the Perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings personally. Thereafter, she sent the remaining Immortal Tea to the other cultivators one after another. Good tea. Sword Immortal Yuhua savored it carefully and praised. It's not bad indeed. Qin Su nodded slightly as well. Unfortunately, there seems to be something missing. Right then, Meng Yao smiled gently. Everyone, if you don't mind, let me play the zither as accompaniment. Do enjoy my music. Amazing. Yin Mubai's eyes lit up as he clapped and smiled. Qin Su, Zhuo Wuchen and even the Arhats were invigorated. As one of the 4 great fairies, zither immortal Meng Yao's reputation far surpassed Fairy Luohua. Not many of the immortals and monks present had heard Meng Yao's zither before. Now that they had the chance to listen to this immortal music, even some Arhats felt emotional, let alone the perfected immortals present. In reality, Meng Yao's actions were similar to Luohua's thoughts. The people before her were all top paragons and monster incarnates of the heavenly world. If she could get to know these people, it would raise her reputation to another level. The reason why few people could hear her zither was not only because she was proud. It was because most people were useless to her and were not worthy of her playing the zither. Chapter 2604, Chapter 2604, Unable to withstand a single blow. Chapter 2604, Unable to withstand a single blow. Meng Yao sat on the ground and took out an ancient zither. She placed it horizontally across her knees and her jade-like fingers brushed across the strings gently, letting out a faint immortal sound. The moment the sound of the zither sounded, everyone was captivated and could not help but immerse themselves in it. Even the immortal tea in the hands of the cultivators became indifferent and tasteless. Although the sound of the ancient zither clearly sounded in the ears of the immortals and monks, everyone's hearts were unusually quiet. Their surroundings seemed to have become extremely empty and only the sound lingered. Meng Yao plucked the strings with her left hand to create the notes while fretting with her right. Her technique was complicated and varied, dazzling and filled with extreme precision. At times, the sound of the zither would be deep and distant, as though time was flowing, causing one to reminisce about the past. At times, it was like a heavenly sound and ethereal like an immortal. At times, it was faint and long, as though a fairy was whispering in one's ears. At times, it would be dignified and solemn, like a gigantic bell. After a long time, a song ended and lingered. The immortals and monks were still immersed in it and could not snap out of their stupor for a long time. Even Jun Yu nodded to herself. Although she despised certain behaviors of Meng Yao, she could not help but admit that the latter was indeed outstanding in terms of the zither Dao. She was truly worthy of the title of the zither immortal. Qin Su clapped and praised. I've long heard that the zither immortal songs are untainted by the mortal world and comparable to heavenly music, and the lingering sound can even reside in one's mind for 3 days continuously. Now that I'm hearing it for myself today, you're truly worthy of your reputation. You're too kind, fellow Taoist. Meng Yao smiled gently. Amitba. Shi Wunyan murmured softly, Patron, the sound of your zither is moving. Impressive, impressive. Many immortals and monks stirred awake and praised. Although Meng Yao looked humble and calm, she was extremely smug internally. After the song, Meng Yao instantly became the center of everyone's attention. Fairy Luohua's immortal tea had already been forgotten by the immortals and monks. Although Fairy Luohua was indignant, she did not dare to express it and could only sit back down. When Yunju saw that, she smiled indifferently and was not surprised. She was in the divine firmament immortal domain with Meng Yao and was also a princess of an immortal kingdom. They had long known each other and she knew more about Meng Yao. No matter where Meng Yao went, she had a way of being the center of attraction to steal the limelight. Apart from Yunju, Mo Qing was also unaffected by Meng Yao's zither. Yunju looked at the quiet Mo Qing beside her and smiled. Mo Qing seemed to have a way of immersing herself in her own world and no one could affect her. Beneath the builder tree, the the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings were high and above. The paragons were gathered in a heroic manner and conversed about the world. There were even fairies all around with the soothing sound of the zither. It was a scene that one would yearn for enviously. Yunmubai, rank 6 of the perfected immortal ranking, praised, in my opinion, fellow Taoist Meng Yao is not only the zither immortal of the divine firmament immortal domain, but also the 9 firmament immortal domain and even the entire heavenly world. That's right. Sword immortal Yu Hua nodded and said as well, even compared to ancient masters of the zither Tao, fellow Taoist Meng Yao is not inferior and even surpasses them. Rank 2 of the Arhat ranking, Wu Gaoni, suddenly said, I heard that a zither fiend has appeared in the fiend domain as well in this generation. She is said to be rather accomplished in the zither Tao as well. At the mention of the zither fiend, the smile on Meng Yao's face clearly froze. But soon, she returned to normal. I know a little about this zither fiend. She was originally from the divine firmament immortal domain. In a ruin, she stole an ancient zither that I took a liking to and escaped to the fiend domain without returning since. Qin Su raised his brows slightly and asked, what zither fiend? Why haven't I heard of her before? It's just a nobody. Sword immortal Yu Hua smiled faintly. I heard that she's just a heaven immortal. She's not worth mentioning and fellow Taoist Meng Yao is on a completely different level from her. Qin Su sneered, a heaven immortal is worthy of being called the zither fiend? Seems like the fiend domain is truly lacking in talents. Suddenly, Lin Lei said, I heard that the zither fiend's cultivation isn't weak. With her Tao companion, she's one of the 7 emotions fiend generals of Tianhuang sect. Tianhuang sect. The hearts of the cultivators skipped a beat when they heard that. Apart from Emperor Bo Sun and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, the most notorious entity in the fiend domain in recent years was Tianhuang sect. It wasn't because Tianhuang sect was strong, but because the sect master of Tianhuang sect was truly terrifying. The supreme perfected fiend, desolate martial. Zhuo Wuchen pouted his lips slightly. The so-called 7 emotions fiend generals are nothing to fear. Apart from Feng Cantian who is a fiend king, the rest of them are merely heaven immortals. On the other hand, I heard that the sect master of Tianhuang sect, perfected fiend desolate martial, is rather capable. He caused a huge ruckus at the immortal peach banquet in the Jade Firmament immortal domain and killed thousands of perfected immortals as well as the city lords of the 5 immortal cities. Fairy Jialan suddenly asked, I heard that when this person underwent tribulation transcendence, he attracted the 10th perfected one heavenly tribulation. I wonder if it's true. Haha. Qin Su burst into laughter. Those rumors were merely created by a bunch of ruffians from the fiend domain trying to boost his reputation. Who would believe them? Even the great emperors in history only attracted the 9 of 9 heavenly tribulation. How is desolate martial qualified to attract the 10th heavenly tribulation? Exactly. Sword immortal Yu Hua nodded as well and glanced at Mo Qing who was not far away. See, junior sister. I've long told you that this matter is way too ridiculous and can't be true. I believe it's true. Mo Qing did not argue with him and merely replied indifferently. Lin Lei said in a deep voice, regardless of whether the 10th heavenly tribulation is real or fake, desolate Marshall's methods are indeed terrifying. Back then, I witnessed with my own eyes how the 5 city lords of the immortal cities could not withstand a single blow from him. When they heard that, the expressions of the paragons on the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings darkened. The city lords of the immortal cities were all experts with a chance of fighting for the perfected immortal ranking. When Lin Lei said that the 5 city lords could not withstand a single blow from desolate Marshall, wasn't he implying that they could not withstand a single blow either? HM&H. Qin Su harumphed coldly and mocked, that's someone from the lower worlds for you. A coward who is easily intimidated by others. What did you say? Lin Lei questioned loudly with a furious gaze. Shi Wunyan smiled gently. Desolate Martial is the supreme perfected fiend, but our 2 domains also have our supreme perfected immortal and supreme Arhat Patron Lin Lei, why do you have to raise the reputation of others at the cost of ours? In the Battle of the Fiend Cave, all the news pointed to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, and almost no one paid attention to Desolate Marshal's existence. None of the cultivators knew that Desolate Marshal was present at that time and even killed a few immortal kings in the Fiend Cave. Jun Yu glanced in the direction of the Fiend Domain and said slowly, no matter what, Desolate Marshal is a powerful and terrifying opponent. If there's a chance, I want to fight him to see who's stronger. Jun Yu loved to fight by nature and had just obtained the title of the Supreme Perfected Immortal. There were not many cultivators who were qualified to be her opponent. As the Supreme Perfected Fiend, Desolate Marshal was one of them. Qin Su sneered and stood up, pointing in the direction of the Fiend Domain as he shouted, if Desolate Marshal dares to step foot into the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain, I'll kill him single-handedly without you guys even making a move. Supreme Perfected Fiend? 10th Tribulation? In front of me, he'll be the one who won't be able to withstand a single blow. Is that so? Right then, a voice sounded from the depths of the Fiend Domain. Chapter 2605, Chapter 2605, Confrontation. Chapter 2605, Confrontation. When they heard that voice, the cultivators beneath the builder tree shuddered and looked over. Mo Qing shuddered and her eyes were filled with disbelief. How was that possible? Was it him? He actually dared to come? Instinctively, Mo Qing looked at Yun Zhu beside her inquiringly. At that moment, Yun Zhu was a little stunned as well. Clearly, she could tell who it was and nodded to Mo Qing. Mo Qing was only truly certain after receiving Yun Zhu's reply. She looked in the direction of the Fiend Domain hurriedly as well. There was a bottomless immortal fiend abyss between the immortal and fiend domains. The builder tree was rooted right in the middle of the abyss. It was said that this abyss was created by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse in his rage back then, using the destruction axe, and almost split the heavenly world into 2. It was lucky that the builder tree existed and connected the 2 domains with countless roots. That was why the heavenly world was not completely separated. In the immortal fiend abyss, there were layers of fog that blocked one's vision and spirit consciousness. In the direction of the fiend domain, through the vast fog, a few figures could vaguely be seen walking over, becoming clearer. Yun Zhu turned to look at Su Zimo, who was at the peak of the builder tree, in confusion. Even with her thoughts, she could not figure out why Su Zimo would ask Desolate Marshal to rush over at this time. What was Desolate Marshal trying to do? Right now, it was the 9 Firmament meet where paragons of both domains were gathered. There were also a group of immortal kings holding down the fort. Even if Desolate Marshal could suppress the perfected immortals of the 2 ranking lists single-handedly, how could he face the 100-odd immortal king experts present? Furthermore, there were more than 20 supreme immortal kings among them. Although Desolate Marshal possessed the Hell Suppression Tripod and could break through the void and leave this place at any moment, if the immortal kings joined forces to seal the void, that method of leaving would be severed completely. On the peak of the builder tree, many immortal kings sensed it as well and stood up one after another, looking in the direction of the fiend domain. Before long, a group of cultivators walked out of the fog. Their leader wore purple robes and a silver mask. He rode on a gigantic heavenly wolf demon beast and walked over slowly. The man and mount walked at the front, exuding a tremendous pressure. Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. Many perfected immortals of the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain recognized the Martial Dao Prime body right away and said hatefully, sounding both shocked and afraid in their tones. It's Desolate Marshal? The immortal kings present exchanged glances and frowned in surprise as well. Naturally, the immortal kings had long heard of the name Desolate Marshal. However, this was the first time for most of them to see the Martial Dao Prime body. Their spirit consciousnesses scanned the Martial Dao Prime body countless times but could not detect his cultivation realm. However, through the aura revealed by the Martial Dao Prime body, the immortal kings could roughly determine that the Martial Dao Prime body had yet to advance to the Grotto Heaven realm and was not even at the half-step Grotto Heaven realm. In the eyes of the immortal kings present, Desolate Marshal alone was not worth mentioning. It was mainly because of Emperor Bo Sun who was backing Desolate Marshal that the immortal kings were wary. Why was Desolate Marshal here? Was his action representative of the intentions of Emperor Bo Nun? Was Emperor Bo Sun nearby? The immortal king experts of the two domains exchanged glances and communicated with their spirit consciousnesses. Both sides decided to hold back for the time being and observe Desolate Marshal's next actions. Immortal Queen Ling Long frowned slightly. She found out about Desolate Marshal's true identity from the human monarch, Lin Zhan. Therefore, she glanced at Su Zimo subtly. Even she could not guess the purpose of Desolate Marshal's trip. However, she was only slightly relieved when she saw Su Zimo's calm expression, as though he was prepared. Beneath the builder tree, the perfected immortal experts were shocked and stood up one after another. They looked at the Marshal Dao Prime Body who was walking over slowly with unfriendly expressions and were on guard. Desolate Marshal was the most notorious fiend in the fiend domain in recent years and none of the cultivators dared to be careless. Jun Yu locked her gaze on the Marshal Dao Prime Body with fighting spirit in her eyes. Shi Wunyan glared at the Marshal Dao Prime Body fixedly as well. There was a playful and interested look in his eyes, as though he wanted to make out something from the latter. Unfortunately, the Marshal Dao Prime Body wore the Mara mask and seemed to be shrouded by a mysterious fog that no one could see through. Behind the Marshal Dao Prime Body, 6 other cultivators arrived side by side. The cultivator on the left was tall and had long hair. As he strode forward, he exuded a heroic aura and his gaze was like lightning. It was Thunder Monarch. Heavenly Wrath, Feng Cantian. Feng Cantian had changed quite a bit over the years. However, many immortal kings on the side of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain recognized him right away. When immortal Queen Ling Long saw this old friend from Tianhuang Mainland, she was excited and delighted. She even wanted to get up right away. However, Feng Cantian, who was separated by the immortal fiend abyss, shook his head slightly in her direction. Immortal Queen Ling Long took a deep breath and did not act rashly. Immortal King Sanya of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom harumphed coldly. To think that it's Feng Cantian. How dare he appear? He managed to condense a grotto heaven and is now an immortal king after all. He must have some tricks up his sleeves. Another immortal king said. Immortal King Sanya sneered, so what? He's just a minor grotto heaven. Immortal King and his combat strength is limited. He's worlds apart from Supreme Immortal Kings. Beside Feng Cantian was a man with a cold expression. He dragged a long saber in his hands. It was Azura Yen Beichen. Beside Yen Beichen was a beautiful and flawless girl in a pink dress. She smiled at the side of the 9 firmament meet and almost overturned the entire world. Many cultivators looked at the girl's smile and could not help but fall into it. Evil Tao of the fiends and demons. An immortal king expert hollered and used a sound domain secret skill to wake many cultivators up. Hee hee. Demoness Ji was not angry as she chuckled and winked at the cultivators. Every single move, frown and smile of hers was filled with charm. Furthermore, it was imperceptible, as though it came from the depths of her heart and was revealed naturally. A young monk stood beside Demoness Ji. His eyes were clear and bright, seemingly filled with endless wisdom. Mingzhen. On the side of the pure land of bliss, someone from the Buddhist monasteries recognized Mingzhen and murmured in shock, he's not dead? Back then, apart from Mingzhen, the group of monks who entered Avicii were all buried there. Everyone thought that Mingzhen was dead as well. To think that he was still alive and had even joined Tianhuang's sect and the fiend domain. Beside Mingzhen was a man and a woman. The man held a jade flute and had a melancholic expression. The woman carried an ancient zither in one hand and held the man's arm with the other, her eyes filled with love. From afar, it looked like an immortal couple had arrived gracefully. It's them. When the Zither immortal saw the couple, her expression turned cold and killing intent flashed through the depths of her eyes. The sect master of Tianhuang's sect, Desolate Marshal, appeared at the 9 firmament meet with his 7 emotions fiend generals. This was also the first time he appeared in front of a group of cultivators, and the visual impact was extremely strong. There were clearly not many people on the other end. Even with Desolate Marshal's mount, there were only 8 of them. However, the 8 of them were not disadvantaged in terms of aura against the experts of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss. Chapter 2606, Chapter 2606, Stepping In. Chapter 2606, Stepping In. Feng Cantian made a name for himself in the heavenly world hundreds of thousands of years ago and obtained the title of the Supreme Perfected Immortal at the 9 Firmament meet. Now that he had entered the Grotto Heaven realm and become an immortal king, such a massive lineup could not suppress him at all. As for Heavenly Wolf, his former master was Emperor Bo Sun, and he had been up against more fearsome lineups. Everything before him was nothing much. Since he had already come this far with no way out, why should he be afraid? Who are the few people beside Feng Cantian? It should be the 7 Emotions Fiend Generals of Tianhuang sect. Over the years, they have also risen to fame in the Fiend domain. So, among the 7 Emotions Fiend Generals, apart from Feng Cantian, who is an immortal king, the rest are only heaven immortals. Fufu, I thought that they were all incredible experts. Many cultivators on the peak of the Builder Tree discussed. At the 9 Firmament meet, most of them were experts at the perfected immortal realm. Naturally, they did not take Yen Beichen and the other heaven immortals seriously. What is Desolate Marshal and Feng Cantian doing here with a few heaven immortals? Could it be that a mere Tianhuang sect wants to go against our 2 domains? Fufu, that's if Desolate Marshal is tired of living. In the eyes of the immortals and monks, Desolate Marshal and the others on the other end of the immortal fiend abyss were truly too weak and were not worth mentioning. There were more than 100,000 perfected immortal experts and more than 100 immortal kings gathered at the 9 Firmament meet. If the immortals swarmed forward together, they would probably drown Desolate Marshal and the others instantly. A cultivator lamented, however, Desolate Marshal sure is bold to dare to come to the 9 Firmament meet with just a few people. The ignorant are always fearless. Another person disagreed. Beneath the Builder Tree. Desolate Marshal, how dare you appear at the 9 Firmament meet? Qin Su looked at Desolate Marshal with a cold gaze and said slowly, do you think that the 9 Firmament meet is like the Peach Banquet where you can come and go as you please? Qin Su had the Supreme Perfected Immortal, Supreme Arhat and 200 top-tier Perfected Immortals by his side. Furthermore, he had a group of immortal kings holding down the fort. Naturally, he was fearless. Zhuo Wuchen withdrew his dustless sword and flicked the blade gently with his finger, letting out a clear sword hum as he said coldly, Desolate Marshal, I heard that you hold the title of Supreme. My dustless sword is keen on exchanging pointers with you. Sword Immortal Yu Hua smiled gently. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. If he dares to come over, I'll let him witness my Moon Essence sword first. Desolate Marshal, you're a violent and murderous fiend. If you dare to take a step into the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain, I shall stand out to slay you and purify you into reincarnation. Rank 4 of the Arhat ranking, Su Ba, said in a deep voice. Beneath the Builder Tree, the immortals and monks declared bold words with torrential auras. Mo Qing could not take it anymore and could not help but sneer. If you guys have the guts, why don't you dare to cross the immortal fiend abyss and fight him? Suddenly, the surrounding voices paused. Mo Qing's words struck everyone's sore spot. Although the immortals and monks looked confident, none of them dared to cross the immortal fiend abyss rashly and take the initiative to attack the Martial Dao Prime body. Firstly, Desolate Marshal was notorious and was known as the Supreme Perfected Fiend. He once caused a huge ruckus at the Immortal Peach Banquet and caused a massacre in Langfeng City. That battle record was way too terrifying. Secondly, if they crossed the Immortal Fiend Abyss, it would mean that Desolate Marshal would get the initiative. Furthermore, there was an Immortal King, Feng Cantian, on the other end, who would dare to charge over rashly. Qin Su sneered, why should we go to the Fiend Domain? If Desolate Marshal has the guts, he should come to the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain. I'll say it again. If Desolate Marshal dares to step into the Nine Firmament immortal domain, I'll definitely make him spill blood on the spot by executing him. The moment he said that, on the side of the Fiend domain, Desolate Marshal glanced at Xiao Siluo behind him and nodded slightly. Thereafter, in front of everyone, Desolate Marshal rode on Heavenly Wolf and crossed the immortal Fiend abyss with Zither Fiend Xiao Siluo. In the blink of an eye, Desolate Marshal had already descended on the side of the Nine Firmament immortal domain and was heading in the direction of Qin Su and the others. Pust. Desolate Marshal truly dared to come over. The cultivators were shocked. Who was the one who wanted to spill my blood on the spot by executing me? The gaze of the Marshal Dao Prime Body was cold as he surveyed the crowd opposite him with an intimidating aura. Apart from Junyu, Shi Wunyan and the other cultivators on the perfected immortal ranking, everyone else averted their gazes and did not dare to meet his. The gaze of the Marshal Dao Prime Body lingered on Qin Su. Instantly, Qin Su felt immense pressure. An indescribable fear shrouded his head and he could not get rid of it. However, at that moment, he was already in a difficult position. Naturally, he could not take back the boast that he had just made. He could only grit his teeth and say in a deep voice, "I was the one who said it." Before Qin Su could finish, the Marshal Dao Prime Body had already attacked. This time round, his attack came without any warning. In a flash, the Marshal Dao Prime Body left the back of Heavenly Wolf and arrived before Qin Su instantly. Without saying anything more to Qin Su, the Marshal Dao Prime Body punched out. Nobody could describe how terrifying that punch was. His speed and strength had already reached their peak in that punch. Qin Su's pupils constricted in shock. There were many perfected immortals present, including the Supreme Perfected Immortal and Supreme Arhat. However, at that moment, he felt that everyone around him seemed to have vanished. He was the only one left against the Marshal Dao Prime Body. In reality, that was the case as well. The sudden attack of the Marshal Dao Prime Body was so fast that none of the cultivators present could react. There were so many experts surrounding the place and immortal kings holding down the fort. Nobody expected Desolate Marshal to come forth almost alone and even take the initiative to strike first. I can't win. I can't defend against this. Instantly, those were the only thoughts in Qin Su's mind. The punch of the Marshal Dao Prime Body made him feel a long-awaited aura of death. Even in the fight for the perfected immortal ranking, he never felt such a strong sense of danger against Junyu's astral imprisonment. Escape. Qin Su was extremely decisive. Without hesitation, he abandoned his physical body and his essence spirit left his body. Carrying the Dao fruit and an ancient book, he fled into the distance. Bang! A single punch from the Marshal Dao Prime Body shattered Qin Su's body. The terrifying punch emitted a scorching heat. Before the flesh could reconstruct, it was burned to ashes by the searing heat of the punch. A single punch destroyed Qin Su's body completely. That was not all there was to the power of that punch. Qin Su's reaction was extremely fast. However, the moment his essence spirit escaped from his body, Su Zimo's punch descended. While shattering his body, it enveloped his essence spirit as well. That punch seemed to collapse the surrounding void. No matter how Qin Su struggled, his essence spirit and Dao fruit could not escape and could only sink deeper. Just as Qin Su's essence spirit was about to be destroyed by a single punch from the Marshal Dao Prime Body, the ancient book beside the Dao fruit suddenly shone with a resplendent light. A terrifying aura burst forth and helped Qin Su escape from danger. Chapter 2607, Chapter 2607, I'll give you a chance. Chapter 2607, I'll give you a chance. The ball of light released by the Grand Pure Jade Manual actually caused the palm of the Marshal Dao Prime Body to feel a sharp pain. The Marshal Dao Prime Body frowned slightly in surprise. The true Marshal Dao Body had already been cultivated to the perfected realm and the power that could cause him pain definitely did not come from Qin Su. The Marshal Dao Prime Body pondered for a moment and quickly understood. As part of a taboo mystic classic, the Grand Pure Jade Manual was extremely precious. Although Qin Su had already obtained one of the 3 Pure One's Jade Manual, the emperor backing him still left a seal on the ancient book to prevent it from being taken away by outsiders. The martial Dao Prime Body was calm. It was good if he could get his hands on the Grand Pure Jade Manual, but it did not matter if he could not. His goal this time round was not the Grand Pure Jade Manual to begin with. With the help of the seal left behind by his father, Qin Su protected his essence spirit and carried the Grand Pure Jade Manual and Dao fruit back to the peak of the Builder Tree. He was scared out of his wits. If not for the seal left behind by his father, he would have died. Even so, he suffered immense losses. His body was destroyed by the martial Dao Prime Body and his flesh turned into ashes. He could not even use blood rebirth. The crowd was in an uproar. Nobody expected the martial Dao Prime Body to be so domineering that he would dare to attack a prince in front of everyone and even use a killing move. Less than that, no one expected that Qin Su would be forced to abandon his physical body and flee in panic after being unable to defend against a single punch from the martial Dao Prime Body. Qin Su was not only the son of an emperor, he was rank 2 of the perfected immortal ranking. If even he could not defend against a single punch from Desolate Martial, who else could be a match for him? Immortal King Long Night was enraged and suddenly stood up, glaring at the martial Dao Prime Body with a dark expression. The scene earlier on was way too sudden. It was too late for him to step in and save Qin Su. At that moment, Qin Su returned. Now, Immortal King Long Night no longer had sufficient reason to attack. After all, that was a fight between perfected immortals. As an immortal king, he cared about his dignity and could not attack Desolate Martial forcefully because of this. Furthermore, he was not certain of the situation on Desolate Martial's side right now and did not know if Emperor Bo Sun was nearby. As such, he did not dare to act rashly. The other immortal kings had the same thoughts. The fact that Desolate Martial dared to bring these people over and was so domineering and fearless meant that there was a high chance Emperor Bo Sun was nearby. Beneath the Builder Tree, Jun Yu, Shi Wunyan and the other immortals and monks had grim expressions and were extremely tense. They glared at the martial Dao Prime Body fixedly, afraid that he would attack again. The punch from the martial Dao Prime Body earlier on shocked everyone as well. If they were in Qin Su's position, it would be difficult for them to escape death. While the immortals and monks were stunned by the aura of the martial Dao Prime Body and fell into silence, as the supreme perfected immortal, Jun Yu stood out decisively. Enduring the immense pressure surging over from Desolate Martial, Jun Yu asked in a deep voice, "Desolate Martial of the Fiend Domain, may I know why you're here?" The martial Dao Prime Body merely punched Qin Su casually and did not continue attacking. "I heard that your 2 domains are holding the 9 firmament meet, so I came to take a look." The voice of the martial Dao Prime Body sounded a little deep through the silver mask. "At the same time, I've got some grudges to settle." "What grudges?" Jun Yu asked. "For the sake of an ancient zither, the zither immortal hunted down my subordinates, the zither and flute fiends, for many years. She even chased them all the way to the fiend domain." The gaze of the martial Dao Prime Body shifted and landed on zither immortal. "Meng Yao. Do you think that Tianhuang's sect is weak?" Meng Yao knew that she could not hide now that she was targeted by the martial Dao Prime Body, so she grit her teeth and stood out, asking, "Desolate Martial, what do you want?" "I'll give you a chance." The martial Dao Prime Body said indifferently, "Since you're known as the Zither Immortal, compete in Zither skills with my subordinate, the Zither Fiend. If you win, I'll spare your life." "Humph." Meng Yao glanced at Qiu Siluo and sneered, "What Zither Fiend? She's self-proclaimed, right? What rights does she have to compete with me in the zither?" "I forgot to mention something." The martial Dao Prime Body did not explain and continued, "If you refuse to compete, I'll beat you to death." "You?" Meng Yao was shocked and furious, rendering her speechless. From Desolate Martial's words, it was as though killing her was as simple as crushing an ant. As one of the 4 great fairies, she had always been admired by countless cultivators like a moon surrounded by stars. Everyone was always respectful at the sight of her, afraid that they would be rude. Now, not only did desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain treat her bluntly, he did not care for her beauty at all and said that he wanted to beat her to death. The most frightening thing was that this person did not have any reservations and was domineering. Meng Yao had no doubt that if she said no, desolate Marshal would attack without hesitation and kill her here. Jun Yu and the others frowned in confusion. The immortal kings on the peak of the Builder Tree had strange expressions as well. Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain was here to make Meng Yao compete with her zither skills? Meng Yao was known as the Zither Immortal and was naturally outstanding in the Zither Dao. The other party wanted to compete with Meng Yao in the Zither Dao? Fu. Sword Immortal Yu Hua chuckled and shook his head gently. How ridiculous. A grade 5 Heaven Immortal wants to challenge Zither Immortal Meng Yao, who is a perfected immortal. Qiu Siluo's cultivation realm was only at the grade 5 Heaven Immortal realm. The difference between her and Meng Yao was immense. In everyone's eyes, the two of them were on completely different levels. That's not fair, right? Mo Qing secretly sent a voice transmission to Yunju. Subconsciously, she was already on the side of the Martial Dao Prime Body and said worriedly, the difference in their cultivation realms is so great. How can the Zither Fiend win? Yunju said deeply, if it's just a comparison of Zither skills, it doesn't have much to do with one's cultivation realm. All right. After a moment of silence, Meng Yao agreed before sneering, since you guys are the ones asking to be humiliated, don't blame me. Meng Yao sat on the ground and placed the ancient zither horizontally across her knees. She looked at Qiu Siluo, who was not far away, and said, come, let me see how strong you are. The moment she said that, Meng Yao's fingertips suddenly plucked the strings of the zither. Clang. A single zither sound was enough to release a chilling killing intent. Instantly, the murderous aura on the battlefield spread and the surrounding temperature dipped. Meng Yao used her left hand to create the notes by pushing, pinching, kneading, humming, knocking, and calling. With her right hand, she strummed the strings of the zither through varied and complicated techniques such as plucking, propping, swiping, lifting, hooking, and brushing. Clang! Clang! The sound of the zither echoed continuously, turning more hurried. The immortals and monks beneath the Builder Tree seemed to be in a battlefield, surrounded by a massive army. They were ambushed on all sides with killing intents hidden. The zither song played by Meng Yao contained a strong killing intent. If the cultivators closed their eyes, they could sense that a massive army was charging over from Meng Yao's ancient zither with a deafening might. The cultivators were immersed in it and felt as though they were about to be trampled by the invisible army and sliced into pieces by countless sabers and swords. If the impact was already this strong for bystanders, it was even worse for Qiu Siluo, who was targeted by Meng Yao directly. Meng Yao's zither sound could be elegant and pleasant. Of course, it could also kill. Chapter 2608, Chapter 2608, Tear the Ranking. Chapter 2608, Tear the Ranking. Just as the emotions of the crowd were gradually stirred by Meng Yao's zither sound, a melodious sound of the zither sounded. The Zither Immortal and Zither Fiend were finally fighting. The sound of Qiu Siluo's zither was completely different from Meng Yao's. Meng Yao's zither sound was murderous and aggressive. There was no sharpness in Qiu Siluo's zither sound. Instead, there was a hint of reminiscence and memory. It was like the warm sun in winter shining down on everyone's hearts. In terms of zither technique, Meng Yao was indeed superior to Qiu Siluo. However, it was precisely because Meng Yao placed too much emphasis on the precision of her zither techniques that she was tainted with the aura of a craftsman and lacked a bit of piety towards the zither Dao. Meng Yao's zither was too utilitarian. She practiced the zither for fame, status, and connections. However, the reason why Qiu Siluo practiced the zither was because she liked it. Her zither carried her Dao and its sound was moving. Meng Yao's song was a cold melody. However, Qiu Siluo's song contained her feelings. In the end, what truly touched one's heart was the deep emotion in the faint sound of the zither. beneath the builder tree. The immortals and monks could not help but be immersed in Chiu Siluo's zither music. For a moment, they forgot where they were and could not help but reminisce about the past with different expressions. Images flashed through Mo Qing's mind. In Avicii, she suffered immense grievances and was bullied and humiliated. However, a purple-robed man with a silver mask suddenly appeared and said something to her. If there are people in the world who slander, bully, humiliate, laugh at, look down on, degrade or hate you, there's no need for you to endure or explain yourself. Just kill them. A faint smile appeared on Mo Qing's face when she recalled that. Yun Zhu recalled that back in Avicii, a refined scholar carried her and escaped. There were only a few layers of clothes between the two of them, and it was inevitable that there would be some friction and contact as he sprinted. Yun Zhu lowered her head slightly and blushed. Shi Wunyan had a conflicted expression. Sword Immortal Yuhua seemed to have recalled something as his expression darkened and his arms trembled slightly. The perfected immortals and arhats were touched by the sound of Chiu Siluo's zither and fell into reminiscence, recalling the most unforgettable scenes of their lives. Some of them were in tears while others were delighted. Some were melancholic while others were smug. Some of them were dejected while others were invigorated. There was sadness, joy, sorrow, resentment, anger and frustration. The 7 emotions and 6 desires were all within. Although Meng Yao's zither sound was still present, it was as though everyone could no longer hear it. Even Meng Yao herself fell into some sort of reminiscence. Her eyes were bloodshot and she had a sorrowful expression as a bead-sized tear fell from the corner of her eye. Piak. The tear fell onto the sound of her ancient zither. Although the sound seemed weak, it shocked Meng Yao. Her fingers could not control their strength and with a bang, a zither string snapped. Her fingertips were cut and blood seeped out. That sound woke the immortals and monks up one after another. It was only then that everyone realized what had happened. When they were unprepared earlier on, they were completely immersed in Chiu Siluo's song and were affected by the emotions of the song. Even her opponent, Meng Yao, was not spared. Victory was decided in this zither competition. I was defeated? Meng Yao murmured in disbelief, unable to accept the reality before her. Today's defeat was a huge blow to her. This meant that from now on, she was not worthy of the title of the Zither Immortal. All the glory she had once obtained would vanish into thin air. As a peak perfected immortal, she lost to a grade 5 heaven immortal. This matter would spread through the heavenly world within a few days. At that time, she would become the joke of the 9 firmament immortal domain. What the martial Tao prime body did was to defeat Meng Yao in her specialty. This was a devastating blow to Meng Yao's Tao heart. This was even more powerful than suppressing her directly in a head-on battle. Meng Yao sat on the spot dejectedly with a lost gaze as an ancient zither with a snapped string fell casually beside her. The martial Tao prime body leaped down from Heavenly Wolf and patted the ladder, indicating for him to carry Chiu Siluo back to the fiend domain first. Heavenly Wolf sensed that the martial Tao prime body might make a huge move and was afraid that he would be implicated. He could not wait to leave and ran to Chiu Siluo's side hurriedly. Jun Yu looked at the martial Tao prime body with a strong fighting spirit condensed in her eyes. She removed the astral chessboard on her back and said in a deep voice, "Desolate marshal of the fiend domain, I respect you for your guts. Against the paragons of the perfected immortal and arhat rankings of 2 domains, you even dared to cross the immortal fiend abyss. Now, I'll give you a chance as well. A chance for us to fight fairly. The perfected immortal and arhat rankings of the 2 domains?" The martial Tao prime body raised his head slightly and looked at the 2 bedazzling ranking lists that hung high above the builder tree, saying indifferently, "In my eyes, your 2 ranking lists are nothing but jokes." Before his sentence was finished, the martial Tao prime body merely raised his hand slightly without making any moves. Shing! Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, the perfected immortal and arhat rankings that hovered above the builder tree were torn into 2 by a powerful external force. Two torn ranking lists floated down slowly and the light emitted by the names of the perfected immortals on them gradually dimmed. Wah! The cultivators were enraged. That action could no longer be considered as a provocation, it was a tight slap on their faces. In front of them, the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings were torn apart. To Desolate Marshal, the two ranking lists were merely jokes. Those words clearly showed that he did not take the paragons of the two domains seriously. How arrogant, fiend! Audacious! Desolate Marshal, the blood feud of thousands of perfected immortals in the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain has to be repaid with blood. The blood of the immortals and monks surged. Even though they were afraid of Desolate Marshal's notorious reputation, they couldn't care less at that moment and many people stood out. This time round, Sword Immortal Yu Hua was extremely smart and did not say anything. He could vaguely sense something. Right from the beginning, Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain had not even looked at him. However, he felt goosebumps all over, as though a calamity was about to descend at any moment. If not for his dignity, he would have left this place right away. The Martial Dao Prime Body could not find an excuse to target Sword Immortal Yu Hua and was in no hurry. He was not only here today for Meng Yao and Sword Immortal Yu Hua. Desolate Marshal. Right then, Shi Wunyan spoke and asked slowly, "From what I know, the Hell Suppression Tripod is in your hands right now? And if it is?" The Martial Dao Prime Body asked without even looking at Shi Wunyan. Shi Wunyan took out a Zen staff from his storage bag and said in a deep voice, "The Hell Suppression Tripod is a sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries and must not be leaked. If you refuse to hand it over, don't blame the monks of the Buddhist monasteries for working together to suppress you." "That's right." Yunmubai shouted as well, "There's no need to insist on having one-on-one fights with fiends of the Fiend Domain. Everyone, let's attack together and kill this fiend for the sake of righteousness." The Martial Dao Prime Body was expressionless. The immortals and monks on the other end merely wanted to group up and attack him. Yet, they had to dig out a dignified excuse for them to do so. That was perfect. He could kill Sword Immortal Yu Hua through the chaos without having to find a reason as well. Chapter 2609, Chapter 2609, Buddha Dragon Elephant. Chapter 2609, Buddha Dragon Elephant. Under Shi Wunyan's instigation, the immortals and monks beneath the Builder Tree glared at the Martial Dao Prime Body murderously, prepared to attack at any moment. With the Supreme Perfected Immortal and Supreme Arhat at the front, what were they afraid of? Furthermore, there was a group of Immortal King experts holding down the fort at the back. If anything were to happen, the Immortal Kings and Heavenly Kings behind them would definitely not sit by idly. "Fiend, surrender!" Shi Wunyan hollered. At the same time, he slammed the Zen staff in his hands heavily on the ground with a loud bang. Coupled with the sound domain secret skill of the Buddhist monasteries released by him, the sound resonated and formed a powerful sound domain attack that was shocking. This was the top-tier sound domain dermic formulation of the Buddhist monasteries, stern admonition. If one's cultivation was not high enough and they were unprepared, their Tao hearts might collapse if they were struck by stern admonition. The deeper one's comprehension of Buddhism, the stronger this sound domain dermic formulation would be. In the battle for the Arhat ranking previously, Shi Wunyan suppressed all other top-tier perfected immortals with stern admonition alone. Naturally, Shi Wunyan did not expect to suppress Desolate Marshal with just stern admonition. However, it was enough as long as Desolate Marshal revealed any openings. He would seize the opportunity to release his strongest methods and attack Desolate Marshal. At that time, the other cultivators in the group would attack. Even with a single divine power, secret skill or spirit treasure each, no matter how strong Desolate Marshal was, he wouldn't be able to defend against them. However, to Shi Wunyan's disappointment, Desolate Marshal did not seem to have any reaction when he released his stern admonition. The silver mask was cold and the eyes beneath it were as deep as the ocean and mysterious as the starry skies. "You're too noisy." The Martial Dao Prime Body glanced at Shi Wunyan and said indifferently. No matter how strong Shi Wunyan was, he was only the supreme arhat. A dharmic Tao of this level had no effect on the perfected true martial Tao. Bogey at all. Before his sentence was finished, the martial Tao prime body suddenly attacked. Without any unnecessary movements, he merely strode forward and punched in Shi Wunyan's direction. That punch was like a volcano eruption as raging tides slammed onto the shore. Instantly, it was as though the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking with an apocalyptic scene. Pust. Shi Wunyan was horrified. He finally understood why Qin Su was willing to abandon his body and turn to flee against Desolate Marshal's casual punch. This punch that suffocated him should not have existed in this world. How could a human possess such power? In a flash, countless thoughts flashed through Shi Wunyan's mind. Enveloped by that punch, he even wanted to turn and flee. But soon, he made a decision. He could not escape. Qin Su turned and fled. He managed to survive thanks to the Grand Pure Jade Manual and the power of the seal left behind by an emperor. His physical body was abandoned and completely crippled. If he made the same choice, he might not even be able to survive. The only way he could survive was to release all his trump cards without holding back and choose to defend against Desolate Marshal's punch while waiting for the reinforcements of the other cultivators. It was not as though Shi Wunyan did not have any powerful trump cards. In fact, in the competition for the Arhat ranking, no one was able to force him to use his full strength and release this trump card. At that moment, he had no other choice. Peerless divine power, Buddha Dragon Elephant. Shi Wunyan clasped his palms together and chanted Sanskrit, turning dignified and inviolable. Suddenly, majestic and divine Buddhas appeared around him. They were indomitable and had already materialized, emitting a blinding golden light and a tremendous might. The kasaya on every single Buddha, facial features and even the fine wrinkles on their faces, brows and eyes were extremely clear, as though Buddhas had descended. The Buddhas chanted Buddhist sutras that reverberated through the world endlessly. At the same time, divine dragons circled around the Buddhas and gigantic divine elephants appeared one after another. The divine dragons roared and the divine elephants trumpeted. It was a divine power of the Buddhist monasteries, Buddha Dragon Elephant. This is. On the peak of the builder tree, the green lotus true body's heart skipped a beat and his gaze intensified when he saw that. Back in Tianhuang mainland, during the final battle against Dao Lord Blood Fiend, he was lucky enough to see this divine power from Monk Daming. However, in Tianhuang mainland, Buddha Dragon Elephant was a supreme divine power. Furthermore, that supreme divine power could only be comprehended if one had extremely high attainments and deep comprehension of Buddhism. Monk Daming's Buddha Dragon Elephant was extremely similar to Shi Wunyan's. However, there were some differences. The green lotus true body was at the peak of the builder tree and was far away, so he could not see everything clearly. With a thought, he secretly released the spirit consonance art and established a connection with the martial Tao prime body. Through the eyes of the martial Tao prime body, he observed the divine power personally and deduced it at the same time. For that reason, the force of the martial Tao prime body's fist paused for a moment and did not continue pummeling down. If not for that, the punch of the martial Tao prime body would have turned this so-called peerless divine power and all the Buddhas, dragons and elephants into ashes alongside Shi Wunyan. However, everyone else had a different understanding of his actions. In the eyes of the other cultivators, Desolate Marshal had released a punch. Thereafter, Shi Wunyan released his peerless divine power and clashed head-on. Both parties were in a stalemate and were evenly matched. It was difficult to tell who was stronger right away. The immortals and monks were invigorated and their fear of Desolate Marshal decreased. At the very least, the scene before them proved that Desolate Marshal was not that strong and invincible. Sword Immortal Yuhua heaved a sigh of relief. I knew it. Desolate Marshal may be the supreme perfected fiend, but fellow Taoist Shi Wunyan is the perfected arhat. They're not that much different. The others had the same thoughts. Only Chess Immortal Junyu frowned with a confused expression. As the only perfected immortal among everyone present who had mastered a peerless divine power, her senses were more accurate than others. Although Shi Wunyan's Buddha dragon elephant seemed powerful and terrifying, it should not have reached the level of a true peerless divine power. His Buddha dragon elephant merely touched the threshold of a peerless divine power. Similar to Yun Ting's immortal vanquishing sword, it was a quasi-peerless divine power. How could Desolate Marshal be in a stalemate with a single quasi-peerless divine power? Jun Yu felt that the scene before her was a little strange. As the supreme perfected immortal, she naturally could not be bothered to join forces with others. She merely watched coldly from the sidelines and frowned. I see. On the battlefield, the two true bodies that had established a connection through the spirit consonance art deduced at the same time and quickly analyzed the secret of Shi Wunyan's Buddha dragon elephant. Indeed, there was a high chance for Buddha dragon elephant to become a peerless divine power. However, raising this divine power to the level of a peerless divine power did not only require a deep comprehension of Buddhism. One had to reach an extremely high level in the divine powers and secret skills of the dragon and elephant races. Only by fusing the starkly different dharmic Taos of the Buddhist monasteries, the dragon and the elephant race into one could Buddha dragon elephant become a true peerless divine power. Chapter 2610, Chapter 2610, Massacre. Chapter 2610, Massacre. In Tianhuang mainland, almost all the Buddhas, divine dragons and divine elephants conjured by monk Daming's Buddha dragon elephant were phantoms. As for Shi Wunyan's divine power before him, the Buddhas had already materialized, as though their true bodies had descended. It was the same for the divine dragons. They circled around the Buddhas and rode on clouds, no different from true dragons. Only the divine elephants beside the Buddhas did not materialize, although they looked lifelike. Instead, they were phantoms that were less robust and agile. Su Zimo was certain that Shi Wunyan had extremely deep attainments in the dharmic Tao of the Buddhist monasteries and the dragon race. However, he did not have a deep understanding of the dharmic Tao of the elephant race and did not meet the requirements. Therefore, his Buddha dragon elephant merely touched the threshold of a peerless divine power and was not considered a true peerless divine power. Su Zimo was delighted when he deduced the secret of the Buddha dragon elephant. The Green Lotus true body cultivated the taboo mystic classic of the Buddhist monasteries, the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Therefore, he definitely had no issue with the dharmic Tao of the Buddhist monasteries. As for the essence spirit of the Green Lotus true body, it was synthesized with the Dragon Phoenix essence spirit to begin with and controlled many divine powers and secret skills of the dragon race. In terms of comprehension of the dharmic Tao of the dragon race, he had even surpassed many true dragons. He had dabbled in the dharmic Tao of the elephant race as well. His innate divine power, the six-tusked divine strength, came from the elephant race. Furthermore, back in the emperor's tomb, after killing Feng Xian, he obtained a high-quality cultivation technique, the divine elephant breathing technique. It also contained many dharmic Taos of the elephant race. Back then, Feng Xian relied on this cultivation technique to attract the four of nine heavenly tribulation to ascend. He even cultivated the bloodline of the divine elephant and was extremely strong. After the Green Lotus true body obtained this cultivation technique, he cultivated for many years as well and comprehended something. In other words, the foundation of the Buddha dragon elephant that he cultivated even surpassed Shi Wunyan. There was a high chance that he could cultivate Buddha dragon elephant into a peerless divine power. In the eyes of others, Shi Wunyan and Desolate Marshal were in a stalemate. However, nobody expected that Su Zimo was deducing and comprehending the dharmic Tao of Buddha dragon elephant in that few breaths. On the battlefield, Shi Wunyan looked at the clear and bright eyes of the martial Tao prime body beneath the silver mask and suddenly felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. He did not think too much about it and sneered, "That's all there is to the supreme perfected fiend. You're still restrained by my peerless divine power. Your Buddha dragon elephant is not at the level of a peerless divine power." The martial Tao prime body said indifferently. "So what?" Shi Wunyan said, "A single quasi-peerless divine power is enough to defend against you. You're way too naive." A mocking look flashed through the eyes of the martial Dao prime body. When he saw that gaze, Shi Wunyan suddenly felt uneasy. Everyone, Nat, are you waiting? Torque, hurry and attack and join Torques to rill this fiend. Without hesitation, Shi Wunyan growled. Right then, the voice of the martial Dao prime body suddenly sounded in his mind. Shi Wunyan, if you want to discuss Buddhism with me, do it in your next life. You are. As though he recalled something, Shi Wunyan's pupils constricted and he was shocked. He had only told a single person that he wanted to discuss Buddhism. Rank 1 of the heaven ranking, Su Zimo of the divine firmament immortal domain. Instantly, as though he understood many things, he looked at the martial Dao prime body with shock and fear. His mouth was agape, as though he wanted to shout or say something. Unfortunately, he no longer had the chance. After Su Zimo deduced the secret of Buddha dragon elephant, Shi Wunyan was no longer of any use to him. Suddenly, the martial Dao prime body exerted strength and his initially idle fist released a shocking divine power once more, shattering Shi Wunyan's Buddha dragon elephant with ease. Poof! The martial Dao prime body smashed Shi Wunyan's head with a single punch and a blood mist spread, destroying his essence spirit on the spot. The supreme Arhat, Shi Wunyan, was dead. At that moment, the divine powers, secret skills, spirit treasures and weapons of the immortals and monks beneath the builder tree had already descended, attacking the martial Dao prime body in an overwhelming manner. Apart from Yun Zhu, Mo Qing and Lin Lei, almost all the perfected immortals and arhats released their strongest attacks. Sword shadows appeared one after another from the dustless sword and its sharpness was revealed. It was filled with a pure sword intent, as though it wanted to cleanse the world of all dust. Shi Gu gripped his gigantic dagger axe with both hands and charged towards Su Zimo. Yun Mubai summoned his 9 tribulations pure yang spirit treasure, a silver-white umbrella that could be used both offensively and defensively. It opened up all of a sudden and the sharp edge of the immortal umbrella spun rapidly, slicing towards the martial Dao prime body. The experts on the Arhat ranking summoned their sentient dermic treasures one after another and released their divine powers and secret skills with ferocious attacks. 0M. Ma. Ni. Pa. Mi. Ham. Many Arhats chanted Sanskrit of the Buddhist monasteries at the same time, forming an incomparably vast sound domain secret skill. They interacted and resonated, causing their might to increase as they surged towards the martial Dao prime body. Scram! Suddenly, the martial Dao prime body opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar in the direction of the many Arhats. Instantly, millions of living beings seemed to appear behind the martial Dao prime body and shouted at the immortals and monks present in a deafening manner. Bang! 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 Dozens of cultivators beneath the builder tree could not defend against the impact and were shattered by the roar of the martial Dao prime body. Broken limbs flew everywhere. Some cultivators were shocked to death on the spot and their essence spirits were destroyed. The cultivators beneath the builder tree were the top 200 paragons of the 2 domains and the strongest perfected immortals. Even so, none of them could defend against the impact of the sound domain attack. A single roar had already destroyed the attacks of the immortals and monks. Of course, under the deliberate control of the martial Dao prime body, Yun Zhu, Mo Qing and Lin Lei were almost unaffected. The attacks released by the cultivators almost collapsed before they even landed on the martial Dao prime body. By the time the dustless sword approached, the sword technique was already flickering and its strength was depleted. The martial Dao prime body grabbed the dustless sword in reverse and exerted strength in his palm. Crack! There was a crisp sound. The dustless sword was shattered into pieces by the palm of the martial Dao prime body and scattered on the ground. Zhuo Wuchen's expression changed starkly. The dustless sword was a grade 9 pure yang spirit treasure. To think that it would be snapped by desolate martial's bare hands. What sort of power was that? After the martial Dao prime body broke the sword, he punched in reverse. Zhuo Wuchen's eyes widened and he could not dodge the incoming punch no matter what. Bang! Zhuo Wuchen was turned into a blood mist by a single punch from the martial Dao prime body. Before he could splatter on the ground, he was burned to ashes by the searing heat contained in the fist of the martial Dao prime body, and his essence spirit was destroyed. At that moment, the arhats closed in as well. Without even looking, the martial Dao prime body punched back. Poof! That punch caused the void to collapse. 5 arhats fell into it and could not break free, enveloped by the fist force of the martial Dao prime body. Poof! 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 All 5 arhats died, killed by a single punch of the martial Dao prime body. Chapter 26:11, Chapter 26:11, Defeating Grotto Heaven. Chapter 26:11, Defeating Grotto Heaven. The situation had changed way too suddenly. Earlier on, Desolate Marshal and Shi Wunyan were evenly matched. To think that Shi Wunyan would be killed by a single punch from Desolate Marshal in the blink of an eye. Shi Wunyan's defeat came too quickly and suddenly. The Immortal King experts on the peak of the Builder Tree could not react for a moment. The heavenly kings of the pure land of bliss were shocked and enraged when they saw that Shi Wunyan was from Mount Meru of the pure land of bliss. He was the strongest of the Buddhist monasteries in this generation and had just been conferred the title of the Supreme Arhat. Who would have thought that Shi Wunyan would be killed on the spot by Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain the second day after obtaining the title of the Supreme Arhat? Shi Wunyan would most likely become the Supreme Arhat who died the fastest in history. By the time the heavenly kings returned to their senses, the battle had already broken out. The martial Dao prime body attacked consecutively, and none of the perfected immortal paragons of the 2 domains were his match. Blood flowed like rivers beneath the Builder Tree. The 200 perfected immortals and arhats who could cultivate beneath the Builder Tree could be considered as the future, foundation and hope of the 2 domains. They were the most outstanding successors of the major sects and factions. When they saw the paragons and successors die one after another, the immortal kings and heavenly kings of the major sects and factions could no longer sit still. No matter what, they had to save their successors first. If Desolate Marshal were to continue pushing forward, not many of the 200 perfected immortal paragons would survive. The supreme immortal kings of the 2 domains maintained their composures. It was enough for ordinary immortal kings to step in for something like this. If a supreme immortal king were to step in just to deal with a supreme perfected fiend, it would be too much. Just as the martial Dao prime body was about to take advantage of the chaos to kill Sword Immortal Yu Hua in the crowd, 3 immortal kings and 4 heavenly kings descended and blocked his path. 7 Grotto Heaven realm experts arrived on the battlefield and released a tremendous spirit consciousness pressure, locking onto the figure of the martial Dao prime body. Fiend, hurry and stop. The lust for blood is boundless, but you can still repent. Lay down the butcher's knife and you shall gain the chance of redemption to become a Buddha. A heavenly king of the Buddhist monasteries chanted Sanskrit and raised his wooden mallet at the same time, knocking heavily on the wooden fish in his hands with a heart-wrenching sound. 2 other immortal king experts extended their palms and suppressed the martial Dao prime body as well. Humph. Against the attacks of Grotto Heaven realm experts, the martial Dao prime body did not retreat but advanced instead. With a cold harumph, he raised his fist and punched twice, colliding against the palms of the 2 immortal king experts. When they saw that, a ridiculous and strange feeling rose in the hearts of the cultivators. They did not know if Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain was a lunatic or out of his mind. Wasn't he committing suicide by fighting against immortal king experts barehanded? Bang! Bang! The 2 immortal kings attacked at an extremely fast speed but retreated even faster. In the blink of an eye, 2 immortal kings were sent flying by 2 punches from the martial Dao prime body. The 2 immortal kings were shocked. The moment they collided with the martial Dao prime body, they felt an almost destructive divine power surge into their bodies wildly. The 2 of them could not defend against it at all. Creak! The 2 immortal kings felt a sharp pain in their arms and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Under countless gazes, the flesh on the arms of the two immortal kings were torn and their bones were broken into pieces, bursting into a blood mist. Their organs were shaken violently as well as they coughed out large mouthfuls of blood with dispirited expressions. Pust. The cultivators gasped in shock. During normal cultivation, immortal king experts would use the grotto heavens they condensed to nourish their bodies and bloodline. Their physiques were strong and their strength was shocking, far surpassing the perfected one realm. But now, two immortal kings were severely injured by two punches from a perfected fiend in melee combat. What sort of power was that? How strong was Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain? The remaining immortal king and 4 heavenly kings were shocked by what happened as well. The 5 Grotto Heaven realm experts had a tacit understanding and summoned their minor Grotto Heavens without hesitation. Boom! 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 The 5 Grotto Heaven realm experts released their minor Grotto Heavens and did not dare to hold back at all. They channeled their immortal king realm combat strength to the peak. The troublesome and terrifying nature of the methods of Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain had already exceeded their imagination. They did not want to suffer a huge loss in the hands of Desolate Marshal in front of everyone. The Martial Tao Prime Body looked at the immortal king and 4 heavenly kings with a cold gaze and a shuddering sinister aura. Immediately after, the Martial Tao Prime Body channeled his blood chi and the deafening sound of a tsunami echoed from his body as his aura surged. 2 purple flames burned in his eyes as well. They were deep and bright and could not be ignored. The next moment, the Martial Tao Prime Body strode forward once more and punched out against the 5 Immortal King experts. That punch enveloped the Immortal King and 4 heavenly kings. It exploded like fire and surged like the sea. Although that punch seemed simple, it condensed all the dermic Tao and will of the Martial Tao. It was unyielding and resisting. It was true to the heart and allows one to exact revenge and repay gratitude as they pleased. This was a simple punch without any unnecessary movements. The Tao was simplicity itself. The Prime Body's fist was the Martial Tao. All the dermic Tao and power of the perfected true Martial Tao body were gathered on that punch. Boom! The fist of the Martial Tao Prime Body collided with the 5 Grotto Heavens opposite him and the surrounding void trembled. Immediately after, the gazes of the Immortal King and 4 heavenly kings changed gradually. The 5 of them looked at the Martial Tao Prime Body in shock and fear as Tnon Ne were 100k one-ing at a Goa. Bang! Boom! Right in front of everyone, the Grotto Heavens that the 5 of them had just propped up were crushed by a single punch from the Martial Tao Prime Body and collapsed into nothingness. Wah! The cultivators widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. This scene had already exceeded the understanding of the cultivators. The power of the Supreme Perfected Fiend could already cross the Perfected One and Grotto Heaven realm to reach such a terrifying level. Even the Supreme Immortal Kings on the peak of the Builder Tree stood up instinctively in shock. Given their sharpness, they could naturally tell that Desolate Marshal's punch earlier on did not involve the power of a Grotto Heaven. In other words, Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain had yet to advance to the Grotto Heaven realm. That punch merely made use of the power released by his body and bloodline. Even so, it was already so terrifying. Although the Immortal King and 4 heavenly kings had only condensed minor Grotto Heavens, the minor Grotto Heaven was still the strongest technique of Grotto Heaven experts. How could it be destroyed by a single punch? Even for them, it was difficult for them to do that without releasing their major Grotto Heavens. When the 5 minor Grotto Heavens collapsed, the Immortal King and 4 heavenly kings were shocked. They no longer dared to stand in front of the Martial Tao Prime Body as they retreated hurriedly to avoid him. 7 Grotto Heaven experts had just charged forward when they were dispersed by a few punches from the Martial Tao Prime Body. The moment the 7 immortal kings retreated, the perfected immortal paragons beneath the Builder Tree were exposed to the Martial Tao Prime Body once more. The gaze of the Martial Tao Prime Body shifted and landed on Sword Immortal Yuhua. Pust. Instantly, Sword Immortal Yuhua felt his hairs stand on end and his scalp tingle. Even his body no longer seemed to be within his control. He was targeted. Chapter 26:12, Chapter 26:12, You re not my match. Chapter 26:12, You re not my match. Sword Immortal Yu Hua felt extremely wronged. Under the instigation of Shi Wunyan, Zhuo Wuchen and the others, more than half of the cultivators beneath the builder tree attacked the martial Dao prime body. There were very few cultivators who did not attack the entire time, and he was one of them. Yun Zhu and Mo Qing knew the martial Dao prime body and would naturally not attack. As the supreme perfected immortal, Junyu was embarrassed to join forces with others and did not move. The reason why Sword Immortal Yu Hua did not attack was simple. It was because his sixth sense was telling him that a huge calamity was about to befall him. Furthermore, for some unknown reason, he had a feeling that Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain was going to make a move on him. The reason why Sword Immortal Yu Hua did not attack was because he was afraid that he would do something that would give Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain a reason to attack. However, he did not expect that although he behaved himself and did not lay a single finger on Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain, he was still targeted in the end despite having no feud with the latter. Sword Immortal Yu Hua was puzzled, indignant and aggrieved. Earlier on, Desolate Marshal unleashed his fiend nature, and even immortal kings of the Grotto Heaven realm were severely injured by him. What could a rank 9 of the perfected immortal ranking like him do? Desolate Marshal could probably crush him with a single finger. Sword Immortal Yu Hua was in no mood to defend. Without hesitation, he turned and fled while shouting for help in the direction of the peak of the builder tree. Trying to escape. The martial Dao prime body sneered and in a flash, sped towards Sword Immortal Yu Hua at an extremely fast speed. No one dared to stop him wherever he passed. Right then, a figure flashed before him, mysterious as though it was carrying a vast starry sky on its back. The supreme perfected immortal, Junyu, had appeared. She was unwilling to join forces with others to deal with the martial Dao prime body. Right now, she was the only one who dared to stand out and block the path of the martial Dao prime body as well. When she saw that, Mo Qing was alarmed and worried about Junyu's safety. After all, in her opinion, Desolate Marshal was fearless in his actions. He came from the Fiend Domain and was decisive to kill. Even immortal kings who stood in his way were suppressed by him. What could Junyu do? Don't worry. Right then, Yun Zhu's voice sounded in Mo Qing's mind with conviction. Nothing will happen to Junyu. Yun Zhu knew the identity of the martial Dao prime body. That was the reason why she was certain that the martial Dao prime body would definitely not hurt Junyu. When he saw Junyu blocking his way, the martial Dao prime body paused for a moment and said indifferently, "You're not my match." Before his sentence was finished, the martial Dao prime body had already attacked. Unlike his previous attacks, this time round, the martial Dao prime body did not release any apocalyptic punch. He merely closed two fingers and formed a finger sword, piercing towards Junyu's glabella. Before the finger sword arrived, Junyu felt her glabella swell slightly and a sharp pain. Indeed, he's very strong. Junyu thought to herself. Against Desolate Marshal, she did not dare to hold back either. She conjured hand seals with both hands and pointed gently in the direction of the marshal. Dao prime body, shouting softly, astral imprisonment. Junyu did not hold back and released that peerless divine power right away. A powerful and mysterious power descended instantly. Everything in the space could not move and the passage of time could not be sensed. The air around the martial Dao prime body seemed to have quietened down instantly. However, before long, a purple halo burst forth from the perfected true martial Dao body. It shone with countless mysterious runes, and the martial Dao prime body broke free from astral imprisonment instantly. To be precise, he did not break free. That peerless divine power did not affect the martial Dao prime body much. The entire situation was like a chess game. Junyu was disadvantaged after that single move. The martial Dao prime body had already arrived before Junyu, and his finger sword hovered above her glabella, ready to spit out sword chi with killing intent at any moment. In a flash, Junyu moved diagonally to the back. Her movement technique was strange and extremely mysterious. The 9 palace subtle steps of immortal Queen Ling Long. Speed was not the focus of the 9 palace subtle steps. However, in a battle, one could often survive through deadly situations and find new openings. Jun Yu released the 9 palace subtle steps and intended to distance herself from the martial Dao prime body for the time being before making further plans. However, the moment Jun Yu dodged to the side, the martial Dao prime body moved and followed her, as though he was tearing through the voids. The two of them were almost one after another and there was no gap between them. The finger sword of the martial Dao prime body was still hovering above Jun Yu's glabella. Jun Yu's heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly released the 9 palace subtle steps once more, wanting to break free from the pursuit of the martial Dao prime body. However, the martial Dao prime body followed suit like a shadow. How is that possible? Jun Yu was alarmed. Desolate Marshal could resolve the 9 palace subtle steps and even follow them? I've already said that you're not my match. The martial Dao prime body emphasized once more. In a flash, he chased in the direction of Sword Immortal Yu Hua. Don't leave, the outcome has yet to be decided. Jun Yu took a step forward, wanting to stop the martial Dao prime body. However, she suddenly felt a trace of warmth flowing down from her glabella. Instinctively, Jun Yu touched it and her hands were filled with blood. Her glabella was pierced. In other words, earlier on, Desolate Marshal could have pierced her essence spirit if he had taken a single inch forward with his finger sword. However, why did Desolate Marshal not kill her although he had already gone on a rampage? Jun Yu could vaguely sense that Desolate Marshal seemed to treat her differently. At the very least, he did not release overly ferocious and terrifying attacks. Instead, he held back. Suddenly, Jun Yu felt a sense of helplessness. The difference between them was way too great. In front of Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain, even her fighting spirit was suppressed so badly that she could no longer raise her head fully. Although there was a slight delay, the martial Dao prime body was extremely fast. Just as Sword Immortal Yu Hua was about to arrive at the Builder Tree mountain range, he caught up to the ladder. Phew! Without a second word, the martial Dao prime body punched out. Suddenly, in the void beside Sword Immortal Yu Hua, a crack appeared and a white-haired old man appeared in a flash. He glared at the martial Dao prime body and shouted, "Fiend, how dare you injure a disciple of our academy?" The Grand Elder of Heaven and Earth Academy had descended. Although the Grand Elder of the Academy was old, he had a major grotto heaven after all and was a supreme immortal king. When he saw that ordinary immortal kings could not stop the martial Dao prime body at all, the Grand Elder of the Academy could not sit still and could only appear personally. No matter what, Sword Immortal Yu Hua was the #1 legacy disciple of the Academy and they could not afford to lose him. The Grand Elder of the Academy extended his slightly scrawny palm and clenched it into a fist, channeling his bloodline to collide with the fist of the martial Dao prime body. Bang! The fists collided with a dull sound of defeat. Neither of them retreated a step back. A cold glint flashed through the eyes of the martial Dao prime body as he looked at Sword Immortal Yu Hua, who was escaping wildly towards the peak of the Builder Tree. He channeled his essence spirit and circulated his divine powers and dermic arts, pointing at Sword Immortal Yu Hua from afar. Eternal damnation. A peerless divine power was released. The martial Dao prime body rarely used divine powers or secret skills in battle. It was not because he had not mastered them, but because most of the time, there was no need for him to do it. His divine powers and secret skills were long fused into his true martial Dao body. The moment the martial Dao prime body released a divine power, it was a peerless divine power, that caused a commotion. Sword Immortal Yu Hua turned back with a pale expression and despair in his heart. Given his strength, he could not withstand the peerless divine power at all. Furthermore, eternal damnation was even more terrifying than astral imprisonment in terms of killing power. The Grand Elder of the Academy was held back by the martial Dao prime body and could not extricate himself for the time being. He could only wave his robes and release a powerful secret skill that charged towards eternal damnation. Chapter 2613, Chapter 2613, Punishment. Chapter 2613, Punishment. Eternal damnation originated from the final heavenly tribulation of the 9 of 9 heavenly tribulations. A myriad of heavenly tribulations transformed into countless runes that emitted a destructive aura and descended, covering the skies densely. There was the formation tribulation, residency tribulation, destruction tribulation, emptiness tribulation, fire tribulation, water tribulation, wind tribulation, weapon tribulation. Each tribulation evolved into countless minor tribulations, 3 calamities, 9 catastrophes and 10 negative karma tribulations. Like a tsunami of heavenly tribulations, they surged and devoured towards Sword Immortal Yuhua. Instantly, an apocalyptic scene appeared above Sword Immortal Yuhua's head. In the tsunami of heavenly tribulations, Sword Immortal Yuhua trembled slightly and looked incomparably insignificant. The sharpness of the true essence on his body was already torn into pieces. Sword Immortal Yuhua endured the pressure with bloodshot eyes. As though he was giving it his all, he channeled his Tao fruit essence spirit and condensed his true essence, releasing divine powers and secret skills one after another. However, his divine powers and secret skills surged into the tsunami of heavenly tribulations like a rock entering the sea. They did not cause any ripples and vanished in the blink of an eye. In the face of the peerless divine power, all his counterattacks were insignificant. Right then, the secret skill of the Grand Elder of the Academy descended and a heavenly encompassing palm appeared above Sword Immortal Yuhua's head, supporting the surging tsunami of heavenly tribulations. Although the peerless divine power was strong, the martial Tao prime body was restricted by his cultivation realm and eternal damnation could not injure a supreme immortal king like the Grand Elder of the Academy. However, the tsunami of heavenly tribulations surged continuously, wanting to flow through the gaps between the fingers of the heavenly encompassing palm and continue to threaten Sword Immortal Yuhua. Humph. The Grand Elder of the Academy harumphed coldly and suddenly exerted strength in his heavenly encompassing palm, gripping it into a fist. Boom! The tsunami of heavenly tribulations suddenly exploded and a loud bang sounded in midair. The grab of that heavenly encompassing palm contained the terrifying power of a supreme immortal king and destroyed the divine power of eternal damnation instantly. Sword Immortal Yuhua was right beside the heavenly encompassing palm and eternal damnation. The aftershock of the collision of the two powers surged and formed a storm that engulfed him instantly. Sword Immortal Yuhua shrieked. Although eternal damnation was destroyed by the Grand Elder of the Academy, there were still many dilapidated heavenly tribulations and damaged runes that retained the Dharmic Tao of the peerless divine power. Naturally, such a Dharmic Tao posed no threat to an immortal king. But, Sword Immortal Yuhua was only a perfected immortal and could not defend against it at all. If the Grand Elder of the Academy had not chosen to fight eternal damnation head-on and merely blocked it, Sword Immortal Yuhua would have had a chance to escape. However, the Grand Elder of the Academy chose to take the peerless divine power head-on. The aftershock spread and it was too late for Sword Immortal Yuhua to escape. In the blink of an eye, wounds appeared on Sword Immortal Yuhua's body. Some of them were so deep that his bones could be seen and some of them even revealed his organs in a shocking manner. The most tragic thing was that one of Sword Immortal Yuhua's arms made contact with a shattered rune of the weapon tribulation and it was forcibly severed. Sword Immortal Yuhua fell to the ground and his body convulsed continuously, letting out a tragic cry. He was covered in blood and did not even look like a human anymore. When the Grand Elder of the Academy saw the tragic state of Sword Immortal Yuhua, his expression changed. He propped up his major grotto heaven and repelled the martial Tao prime body, arriving beside Sword Immortal Yuhua instantly. The Grand Elder of the Academy took out a few immortal pills and sent them into Sword Immortal Yuhua's mouth. Thereafter, he conjured hand seals consecutively and released a few healing secret skills that struck Sword Immortal Yuhua. Ah! Ah! It hurts. After a few healing secret skills, Sword Immortal Yuhua's cries turned even more tragic. His body convulsed and his injuries showed no signs of healing. Perhaps because the immortal pills had some effect or because of the few healing secret skills of the Grand Elder of the Academy, Sword Immortal Yu Hua seemed to have regained a momentary clarity as he looked at the Grand Elder with a pleading expression. It's too painful. Hurry, kill me and give me a swift death. Sword Immortal Yu Hua's voice trembled slightly. Looking at Sword Immortal Yu Hua at the foot of the mountain, the cultivators gasped and shuddered when they heard the terrifying tragic cries. Eternal damnation. That's way too terrifying. Once he's struck by that peerless divine power, no injuries can be healed. At this rate, Sword Immortal Yu Hua won't be able to hold on for long and will be tortured to death by his injuries. One of the three great sword immortals of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain and rank 9 of the Perfected Immortal ranking. To think that he would end up in such a state today. When the immortals and monks saw that, they were filled with emotions. Initially, everyone felt pity for Shi Wunyan and the others when they saw Desolate Marshal kill them with a single punch. But now, compared to Sword Immortal Yu Hua, Shi Wunyan and the others might have been lucky to die without any pain. Another person sighed. If he had known earlier, Sword Immortal Yu Hua wouldn't have escaped. He would have chosen to be punched to death by Desolate Marshal instead of suffering such pain and torture. Although Mo Qing was long displeased with Sword Immortal Yu Hua, she could not help but shake her head and sighed gently when she saw him in such a tragic state. Sword Immortal Yu Hua had once said in front of her, "If Desolate Marshal dares to appear in front of me, I'll definitely sever his facade and destroy his myth with a single slash." Those words seemed to have happened yesterday. It was a little ironic when she recalled that scene. Back then, even Sword Immortal Yu Hua himself had not expected that he would truly encounter Desolate Marshal and end up in such a state. Although there were many cultivators present, apart from Yun Zhu, there was probably no one else who knew why Desolate Marshal targeted Sword Immortal Yu Hua. Sword Immortal Yu Hua targeted Su Zimo repeatedly and even joined forces with outsiders to try and kill him. If he killed Sword Immortal Yu Hua directly, it would be letting the latter off too easily. The only way to punish him was to let him die in pain and torment. At the side of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain, Lin Luo looked at Sword Immortal Yu Hua, who was covered in blood and screaming repeatedly, and frowned slightly. "Mother, is there no way to dispel eternal damnation?" Lin Luo asked. Immortal Queen Ling Long said, "Of course there is, but it's very difficult unless Yu Hua can comprehend the secrets of the Grotto Heaven realm and become an immortal king. Judging from his current situation, it's difficult for him to survive, let alone attempt to advance to the Grotto Heaven realm." Lin Luo asked again, "Eternal damnation is only a peerless divine power after all. Can't the immortal kings purge and suppress that power?" "Of course we can." Immortal Queen Ling Long said, "Any immortal king present can purge eternal damnation as long as they summon their Grotto Heaven. However, at the same time, Yu Hua won't be able to survive and will be crushed to death by the power of the Grotto Heaven." The dermic Tao of eternal damnation had already fused into every single wound on Sword Immortal Yu Hua's body. If his essence spirit wanted to escape, it would be struck by the power of eternal damnation. Purging eternal damnation from him meant that his body, bloodline and even eternal damnation would be suppressed and crushed. Pausing for a moment, Immortal Queen Ling Long changed the topic. "However, nothing is absolute. If there's an immortal king whose Grotto Heaven condenses endless life force, it might be able to help him dispel eternal damnation and save his life. However, there are extremely few immortal kings like that. At the very least, I've never heard of an immortal king in the heavenly world possessing such a Grotto Heaven." Chapter 26:14, Chapter 26:14, A Slap. Chapter 26:14, A Slap. The Grand Elder of the Academy looked at Sword Immortal Yu Hua, who was in pain, with a conflicted and hesitant expression. He raised his palms slowly, but it hovered in midair, unable to descend. Killing Sword Immortal Yu Hua and giving him a swift death so that he would not be tormented by eternal damnation might just be the best outcome for him. However, Sword Immortal Yu Hua was the #1 legacy disciple of the Academy after all, and the Grand Elder could not bring himself to do it. "Yu Hua, if I send you back to the Academy, the sect master might be able to save your life. As for The Grand Elder of the Academy hesitated and did not continue. He did not wish to continue inflicting blows on Sword Immortal Yuhua. Even if the sect master of the Academy could save Sword Immortal Yuhua's life, he would be more than half crippled. Sword Immortal Yuhua might even be inferior to many legacy disciples in the future, let alone advance to the Grotto Heaven realm to become an immortal king. Furthermore, this blow would have a huge impact on Sword Immortal Yuhua. From now on, the title of Sword Immortal Yuhua in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain and even the entire heavenly world would be completely destroyed. The Grand Elder of the Academy sighed gently and tore through the void with Sword Immortal Yuhua, returning to Heaven and Earth Academy. Apart from him, there were more than 100 ordinary immortal kings and more than 20 supreme immortal kings watching. Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain could not escape at all. For the Grand Elder of the Academy, it was more important to save Sword Immortal Yuhua. On the side of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain, although Immortal Queen Ling Long was still seated a far distance away, her upper body was slightly straightened and she had a grim expression, looking tense. Su Zimo, if your aim was to suppress the Zither Immortal this time round, you have already achieved your goal. You should leave as soon as possible or it will be too late. Immortal Queen Ling Long sent a voice transmission to the Green Lotus True Body on the side of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain and reminded secretly with her spirit consciousness. There's no hurry. Su Zimo replied. Immortal Queen Ling Long frowned slightly and reminded again, you have to understand that now that you have injured and forced back ordinary immortal kings, the supreme immortal kings present can no longer sit still. You just fought with the Grand Elder of the Academy. You should know that the difference in strength between ordinary immortal kings and supreme immortal kings is extremely great. I saw that you didn't gain any advantage in your clash with the Grand Elder of the Academy. In fact, I'm afraid you were even disadvantaged. Su Zimo sent a voice transmission, indeed. The power of my martial Dao Prime body is not enough to go against supreme immortal kings yet. One more thing. Immortal Queen Ling Long continued, the situation here is unlike Langfeng. City of the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain. Back then, there were no immortal kings holding down the fort and you could leave with your hell suppression tripod at any time. However, at this moment, the supreme immortal kings present can't sit still any longer. If these people join forces and seal the void, you won't be able to leave this place even if you want to summon the hell suppression tripod to break through the void. Sealing the void was something that immortal king experts could do. Immortal Queen Ling Long was afraid that Su Zimo might not understand the pros and cons fully, so she reminded him. Since immortal king experts could break through the void, they could naturally join forces to seal the void to prevent other immortal king experts from leaving casually. Once the 20-odd supreme immortal kings present attacked and sealed the void, even if immortal Queen Ling Long joined the fray, she would not be able to escape with the martial Dao Prime body. At that time, no one would be able to save the martial Dao Prime body. Su Zimo had a calm expression. Thank you for your reminder, Senior Ling Long. It would be best if these supreme immortal kings joined forces to seal the void. I was even afraid that they would be wary and not dare to attack the martial Dao Prime body. Immortal Queen Ling Long was smart and could vaguely tell that Su Zimo seemed to be implying something. However, she could not figure it out right away and said exasperatedly, you killed perfected immortal paragons of the two domains so domineeringly and even injured a few immortal kings. Even if they have reservations, they can't sit by idly and let you do whatever you want. Do be careful. Immortal Queen Ling Long reminded again. On the battlefield. The martial Dao Prime body did not stop the Grand Elder of the Academy from taking Sword Immortal Yuhua away. His heart skipped a beat and his expression turned cold when he sensed the commotion behind him. The martial Dao Prime body released his spirit consciousness and gathered the remaining eternal damnation Dermic Dao in his palm, turning it into a dark red light. Immediately after, he retreated and sped in the direction of the immortal fiend abyss. After the outcome for the Zither competition between the Zither Immortal and Fiend was decided, Heavenly Wolf obeyed the orders of the martial Dao Prime body and carried Chio Siluo in the direction of the Fiend domain. Thereafter, a huge battle broke out beneath the builder tree and the martial Dao prime body went on a massacre. Out of curiosity, Heavenly Wolf turned around and looked back while heading towards the immortal fiend abyss at a slightly slower speed. Just as the martial Dao prime body was fighting against the Grand Elder of the Academy, Zither Immortal Meng Yao, who was initially still slumped on the ground in a daze, suddenly snapped out of her stupor. It was as though she had regained consciousness instantly. She raised her head suddenly and looked at Qiu Siluo, who was in the distance with deep jealousy in her eyes. Swoosh! In a flash, Meng Yao chased after Qiu Siluo with a cold and murderous expression. When Heavenly Wolf saw Meng Yao chasing after them, he could not help but jump in shock and sprinted towards the immortal fiend abyss hurriedly. However, his and Qiu Siluo's cultivation realms were only at the Heaven Immortal realm. In terms of speed, they could not compare to Meng Yao, who was at the peak of the perfected immortal realm. Just as he was about to reach the immortal fiend abyss, Meng Yao caught up to him. Your zither skills can't compare to mine at all. Meng Yao looked at Qiu Siluo on the back of the Heavenly Wolf and felt endless indignance as she shrieked, the reason why you can defeat me is because of the soul-reaping zither. This ancient zither should have been an opportunity for me. As long as I kill you and retrieve the soul-reaping zither, I will still be the zither immortal and one of the 4 great fairies. There was no fear on Qiu Siluo's face. Instead, there was a hint of pity in the way she looked at Meng Yao. Do you really think that your defeat was because of an external object? Qiu Siluo asked softly. Those words pierced Meng Yao's chest like a sharp blade. She shuddered. As Qiu Siluo had said, she knew very well in the depths of her heart the reason why she was defeated. She blamed everything on the soul-reaping zither because she was unwilling to face it. I don't care. Meng Yao grit her teeth. I want to take back what is mine. Meng Yao was not only referring to the soul-reaping zither, but also all of the glory and reputation that once belonged to her. Die. Meng Yao channeled her Dao fruit and a halo appeared behind her head. Her spirit consciousness condensed and she released an essence spirit secret skill at Qiu Siluo. Right then, a figure suddenly appeared and blocked in front of Meng Yao. Her essence spirit secret skills collided against the silver mask on the figure's face and seemed to ripple before vanishing. The martial Dao prime body had arrived. You. When Meng Yao saw the mask and looked at the pair of eyes burning with purple flames behind the silver mask, her expression changed and she was so scared that she could not speak. The martial Dao prime body was expressionless as he raised his hand and slapped Meng Yao. A scarlet light flashed in his palm and entered Meng Yao's cheek. That was the remnant of eternal damnation. Chapter 26:15, Chapter 26:15, Other Schemes. Chapter 26:15, Other Schemes. Piak. The slap of the martial Dao prime body sent Meng Yao flying dozens of feet away. Initially, Meng Yao thought that she would definitely die. After all, she had just witnessed the methods of the martial Dao prime body and he could even kill Shi Wunyan with a single punch. Even the minor grotto heavens of immortal kings were shattered. No matter how tough her head was, she could not defend against the power of desolate martial's slap. However, when she was sent flying, her ears buzzed and her vision blurred. She composed herself and sat up. She was not dead. A fiend like desolate martial actually knew how to cherish women? Instantly, Meng Yao's mind was filled with thoughts. However, she quickly noticed something unusual. Many cultivators in the surroundings looked at her strangely with a hint of fear and pity. Some cultivators were even unwilling to meet her gaze and averted it. Right then, Meng Yao finally felt a tearing pain on her cheek. Instinctively, she touched it and her palm was filled with blood. Such superficial wounds had no effect on perfected immortals at all. Meng Yao channeled her essence spirit Dao fruit and circulated her bloodline, wanting to heal the injuries on her cheek. However, she quickly realized that the wound on her face could not heal. Even after she consumed a large number of immortal pills, there were no signs of recovery. Although the blood flow from the wound had stopped for the time being, there was a menacing scar on her face. Her bright red flesh was overturned and her initially beautiful face was completely torn apart. Anyone who saw that face would only feel fear and would definitely not associate her with the heavenly four great fairies. At that moment, Meng Yao finally understood why the surrounding cultivators were looking at her strangely. The two reasons why she was able to become one of the four great fairies were because of her superb zither skills and her devastatingly beautiful face. Those were also the reasons why she was proud. But now, Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain had appeared and destroyed two of her most valued elements. Everyone knew in their hearts that what Desolate Marshal just did was even more terrifying than killing Zither immortal Meng Yao directly. This outcome was a fate worse than death for Meng Yao. In reality, after eternal damnation was struck by the secret skill of the Grand Elder of the Academy and more than half of it was absorbed by Sword Immortal Yu Hua, there was not much power left in the Dermic Dao. Even so, it left an irrecoverable scar on Meng Yao's face. "You've ruined me. Why? Why are you so cruel to me? I have no feud with you at all." Meng Yao sat in the mud with disheveled hair and a lost expression. She murmured softly with listless eyes. The blow to her this time round was way too great. In fact, the Martial Dao Prime Body even killed her chance of making a comeback. The beauty in Zither Dao that she relied on was crippled by the Martial Dao Prime Body. She lost all her dignity today and her past glory vanished into thin air. In less than half a day, she fell from her high and mighty pedestal into a bottomless abyss where she could not see the light of day. Right then, on the other side, Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath rushed over when he saw that Xiao Siluo was in danger. However, by the time he arrived, the Martial Dao Prime Body had already dealt with Meng Yao. "Zimo, let's go. Today's matter has ended." Feng Cantian looked at the group of immortal kings opposite him and felt uneasy as he sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. Although he was fearless, he did not want to die here foolishly. In the future, he was going to kill his way back to the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain and take revenge on King Jin and his heir. "Brother Feng, take them back first." The tone of the Martial Dao Prime Body was calm, as though he did not notice any danger. "We'll leave together," Feng Cantian insisted. The Martial Dao Prime Body said, "Take Heavenly Wolf and Xiao Siluo back to the other side first. Remember, don't attack no matter what happens later on." "You." Feng Cantian could tell that there seemed to be a deeper meaning in the words of the Martial Dao Prime Body. He did not ask in detail and merely nodded. He led Heavenly Wolf and Xiao Siluo to leap through the Immortal Fiend Abyss and return to the Fiend Domain. "Isn't the Sect Master coming back yet?" Gu Tongyo's eyes were melancholic and worried. Feng Cantian pondered for a moment. The Sect Master should have other motives. "Let's wait and see. Don't act rashly." Beneath the Builder Tree, the top 200 perfected immortal paragons of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss seized the opportunity to disperse and flee far away. There were only a few people who remained on the spot. Among them were the 3 great fairies, Book Immortal Yunzhu, Painting Immortal Mo Qing and Chess Immortal Junyu. The Martial Dao Prime Body walked slowly towards the Builder Tree. The immortal kings were secretly alarmed and tore through the void one after another, blocking in front of the Martial Dao Prime Body. They were on guard and nervous. All the immortal kings witnessed what happened earlier on. A single punch from the Martial Dao Prime Body shattered the grotto heavens of 5 immortal kings. How far had Desolate Marshal cultivated to? The many immortal kings could clearly tell that Desolate Marshal did not have the aura of the grotto heaven realm. However, the power he released was even above the ordinary immortal kings. On the peak of Builder Tree, the 20-odd supreme immortal kings exchanged glances and stood up slowly, emitting a tremendous might that surged over. Immortal Queen Ling Long glanced sideways at Su Zimo of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. At that moment, Su Zimo had a calm expression, as though he could not sense any danger. "If you want to leave, this is your last chance." Immortal Queen Ling Long hesitated for a moment and could not help but send a voice transmission with yet another reminder. She could not divine everything about the martial Tao prime body, nor could she guess his intentions. "Don't worry, Senior." Su Zimo's voice was calm and he did not explain further. The martial Tao prime body looked at the 20-odd supreme immortal kings on the peak of Builder Tree and suddenly said, "Why? Are the supreme immortal kings of the two domains prepared to attack?" Prince Qin Su of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain was crippled and Immortal King Long Night was enraged. At that moment, his gaze was dark as he said slowly, "Desolate Marshal, how dare you come to the Nine Firmament? Meet and start a massacre. If we let you leave alive, where will our dignity go?" "That's right." Immortal King Qin Yang raised his voice and said, "You claim to be the supreme perfected fiend, but in reality, you're already an immortal king expert who can defeat those with minor grotto heavens. It won't be considered bullying if we attack you. Desolate Marshal, there's no need for you to try and escape from this place." Immortal King Qi Ping sneered, "I don't mind telling you that the void here has already been sealed by us. Even if you summon the Hell Suppression Tripod, you won't be able to escape back to Avicii." Amitabha. Heavenly King Luotian of the Pure Land of Bliss clasped his palms together and chanted the Buddhist proclamation softly. "Desolate Marshal, the Hell Suppression Tripod in your possession is a sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries. It's time for you to return it to its rightful owner today." The Hell Suppression Tripod was the Emperor weapon of Great Emperor Infinite and was related to Avicii. Even the immortal kings of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain wanted to take it for themselves, let alone the heavenly kings of the Pure Land of Bliss. Furthermore, when they saw the martial Tao prime body release such a terrifying power, the imaginations of the immortal kings ran wild and they thought that it had something to do with Avicii. "All right." The eyes of the martial Tao prime body shone with purple flames and his fighting spirit surged as he said slowly, "This is a good opportunity for me to experience the capabilities of the supreme immortal kings of the two domains." Chapter 26:16, Chapter 26:16, Everlasting Night. Chapter 26:16, Everlasting Night. When the martial Tao prime body said that, the immortals and monks on the peak of the Builder Tree were shocked. How many years had it been since the rise of the Fiend Domain's Desolate Marshal? Desolate Marshal had just been conferred the title of the Supreme Perfected Fiend not long ago. Today, he was actually declaring that he wanted to fight against the supreme immortal kings of the two domains. It was only at that moment that everyone gradually understood that the Supreme Perfected Immortal and Supreme Arhat were not Desolate Marshal's targets. In the eyes of Desolate Marshal, the two ranking lists were indeed a joke. Desolate Marshal was here for the immortal kings of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss. Furthermore, it was the Supreme Immortal Kings. Ever since the Nine Firmament meet was held, no one from the Fiend Domain had dared to cause trouble here. Furthermore, the Nine Firmament meet this time round was different from the past. The two domains sent more than 100 ordinary immortal kings and more than 20 supreme immortal kings with a massive might. Up till the end of the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings, everything went smoothly and peacefully. Who would have thought that Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain would single-handedly cause a blood storm at the Nine Firmament meet today? Let's see what else you have. Immortal King Long Night of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain attacked and arrived before the martial Tao prime body instantly. He raised his palm and slapped the head of the martial Tao prime body. After entering the Grotto Heaven realm and becoming an immortal king, many divine powers and secret skills were condensed in the Grotto Heaven. As for the Grotto Heaven, it nourished the body and bloodline throughout the years. Therefore, the body and bloodline of an immortal king contained the power of the Grotto Heaven and could release a shocking power with every move. For a fight between Grotto Heaven realm experts, it was a little like returning to nature and simplifying things. Although it seemed like it was a simple palm strike from Immortal King Long Night, it contained the power of the Grotto Heaven. It vaguely sealed the void around the martial Tao prime body, preventing him from dodging, and he could only take it head-on. The martial Tao prime body was expressionless as he circulated his blood qi, letting out the deafening sound of raging tides. What strong blood qi! The surrounding immortal kings were secretly alarmed when they heard the sound of blood qi rising. How did Desolate Marshal cultivate to such an extent before he even entered the Grotto Heaven realm? Could it be that this person had already condensed a Grotto Heaven and merely hid his aura without revealing it? Bang! The Martial Dao Prime body punched out and collided with the palm of Immortal King Long Night. Both parties shuddered. All right. The gaze of Immortal King Long Night intensified as he attacked consecutively. The Martial Dao Prime body was fearless as he stood in midair and counterattacked. Both parties clashed consecutively in midair and their fists and palms collided with a deafening bang, causing many cracks to appear in the void and the world to tremble. This was a fight between immortal kings. Even without the use of the Grotto Heaven, the void would still shake. Both parties clashed for more than 10 rounds and were evenly matched. Immortal King Long Night narrowed his eyes slightly. As a supreme immortal king, the Grotto Heaven had nourished his body and bloodline for hundreds of thousands of years. Even after launching consecutive attacks today, he could not gain any advantage against Desolate Marshal at all. Of course, he was only surprised but not nervous. The power released by Desolate Marshal earlier on was not enough to threaten him. Furthermore, he did not use his full strength. For Immortal King experts, the Grotto Heaven was their strongest technique. The other Immortal King experts such as Immortal King Qin Yang exchanged glances with smiles and relaxed expressions. Given the current situation, there was no need for them to attack. Immortal King Long Night alone was enough to suppress Desolate Marshal. Long Night, don't get entangled with him. Suppress him as soon as possible lest other variables appear. Immortal King Qin Yang said in a deep voice. All right. Immortal King Long Night hollered and channeled his essence spirit to prop up his major Grotto Heaven. The void behind him suddenly collapsed and a dark void without any light appeared. That was his Long Night Grotto Heaven. In this Grotto Heaven, one would fall into a long night and it was difficult to see light. With the appearance of the major Grotto Heaven, the aura of Immortal King Long Night surged and his combat strength rose as well. It's time to end things. Immortal King Long Night said indifferently. He reached into the Grotto Heaven behind him and withdrew a pitch-black spear. A Grotto Heaven spirit treasure. After cultivators advanced to the Immortal King realm, their sentient dermic treasures could also be placed into the Grotto Heaven and nourished by it. As time passed by, when the sentient dermic treasure fused completely with the Grotto Heaven, they would transform into Grotto Heaven spirit treasures. Any Grotto Heaven spirit treasure would contain the dermic Tao of the Grotto Heaven and was extremely powerful. Swoosh! Immortal King Long Night supported his Grotto Heaven and strode forward. Waving the pitch-black spear in his hands, he stabbed towards the Martial Dao Prime body with an apocalyptic might. The Martial Dao Prime body had a calm expression and a green light flashed on his glabella. The Hell Suppression Tripod appeared and was filled with an ancient aura as electric arcs coiled around it with an extraordinary might. When the Immortal Kings saw the Hell Suppression Tripod, their eyes lit up. This was the weapon of Great Emperor Infinite in the past. More importantly, the Hell Suppression Tripod was the key to controlling the infinite hell. There was no Grotto Heaven aura on the Hell Suppression Tripod. This confirmed everyone's guess that Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain had not entered the Grotto Heaven realm at all. Many immortal kings glared at the Hell Suppression Tripod with puzzled expressions, as though they had discovered something. The realm of the Hell Suppression Tripod had fallen. After passing through the perfected one heavenly tribulation, it was merely at the level of a sentient dermic treasure. But now, they could see remnant marks left behind by 10 heavenly tribulations on the Hell Suppression Tripod. Could the legend be true? Did Desolate Marshal really attract the 10th heavenly tribulation? When the news spread, even the many immortal kings present scoffed and did not believe it, let alone Yu Hua and the other perfected immortals. After all, throughout history, there had never been a 10th tribulation since life was born in the upper world. At that moment, when the immortal kings saw the 10 burn marks on the Hell Suppression Tripod with their own eyes, they vaguely realized that there was a high chance the rumors of the past were true. There was truly a 10th tribulation in the perfected one heavenly tribulation? Why were there no records of the 10th tribulation throughout history? Even people as talented as the great emperors of the past went through the 9 of 9 heavenly tribulation at the very most. Clang! Just as everyone's imagination was running wild, the pitch-black spear collided heavily against the hell suppression tripod and electric arcs flew everywhere. This time round, the martial Tao prime body retreated a few steps in succession. However, with the hell suppression tripod that had passed through the 10th tribulation, the martial Tao prime body still managed to defend against the accumulated attack of immortal King Long Night. Although the cultivation realm of the hell suppression tripod had fallen, it was an emperor weapon back then after all. Furthermore, it was the key to suppressing the infinite hell. Even the Grotto Heaven spirit treasure could not destroy it with ease. Humph. When immortal King Long Night saw that he could not suppress the martial Tao prime body even after summoning his major Grotto Heaven and Grotto Heaven spirit treasure, he had a terrible expression and could not help but harumph coldly before attacking once more. This time round, the blood chi of immortal King Long Night surged as he wielded his spear and attacked. The major Grotto Heaven carried endless might and suppressed the martial Tao prime body. He wanted to make use of his Long Night Grotto Heaven to devour desolate martial and refine him completely as nourishment for his Grotto Heaven. Chapter 26:17, Chapter 26:17, Unable to Devour. Chapter 26:17, Unable to Devour. The everlasting night and boundless darkness crept forth. Instantly, the world went dark and the heavens lost its light. Immortal King Long Night used his Grotto Heaven spirit treasure to restrain the hell suppression tripod while the major Grotto Heaven behind him devoured the figure of the martial Tao prime body. It's all over. When the immortal kings saw that, they shook their heads gently. As long as desolate martial fell into the major Grotto Heaven of immortal King Long Night, he would be reduced to fish that could be slaughtered at will no matter how shocking his methods were. Immortal Queen Ling Long frowned worriedly. On the side of the fiend domain, Feng Cantian took a deep breath and suppressed his urge to attack, continuing to watch. The martial Tao prime body had repeatedly instructed him not to attack. He believed that the martial Tao prime body would not die so easily. In the Long Night Grotto Heaven, the gaze of the martial Tao prime body intensified. Purple flames burned in his eyes and his blood chi surged as he channeled his bloodline to its limits, releasing his bloodline phenomenon, the Heaven and Earth Furnace. Boom! The martial Tao prime body stood in the darkness and shone with an endless brilliance as flames surged into the skies. The flames included the martial spirit fire, tribulation fire, red lotus karmic fire, dragon phoenix flame and hellfire. Despite the buff of so many flames, he was still unable to go against the Long Night Grotto Heaven. However, it was also impossible for the Long Night Grotto Heaven to devour and refine the martial Tao prime body. For example, hellfire originated from Avicii. Due to the cultivation realm of the martial Tao prime body, its power was far inferior to when it was in Avicii. However, the Long Night Grotto Heaven could not refine it at all. Initially, the Grotto Heaven was dark and silent. However, after devouring the martial Tao prime body, a gigantic ball of flames appeared in the Grotto Heaven. Both parties were in a stalemate. The blood chi of the martial Tao prime body was strong and even as time passed by, the flames burned furiously without stopping. However, the power of the Long Night Grotto Heaven was being depleted. When immortal King Long Night sensed this, his expression darkened. On the battlefield, Heavenly King Luotian chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly and said, "Patron Long Night, you sure are capable. Your merits for killing perfected. Fiend Desolate Martial are immeasurable. However, the Hell Suppression Tripod is a sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries. Patron Long Night, please return it to its rightful owner." Immortal King Qin Yang smiled gently. The Hell Suppression Tripod is an emperor weapon. It's said to be connected to the infinite hell and a taboo mystic classic. Fellow Taoist Luotian, you're not the only one. I believe everyone present is interested in the Hell Suppression Tripod. Immortal King Qi Ping said indifferently, the Hell Suppression Tripod no longer has an owner. Since we're all present, we can't hand it over to someone casually. The immortal kings present thought that Desolate Marshal would definitely die and had already begun to discuss the ownership of the Hell Suppression Tripod. Right then, a violent fluctuation came from the major grotto heaven of Immortal King Long Night. In the endless darkness, a flame appeared and intensified. Immediately after, the ball of flames fell onto the battlefield. In the flames, a figure stood. It was Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. The immortal kings frowned. What was going on? The Long Night grotto heaven failed to refine Desolate Marshal and spat him out instead? Sensing the gazes around him, Immortal King Long Night had a terrible expression as he grit his teeth. This fiend is in possession of strange dermic daos and controls many powerful flames. It's difficult to refine him. Amitba. Heavenly King Luo Shen strode forward. Seems like I'm the only one who can subdue this fiend. When Heavenly King Luo Shen arrived before the Martial Dao Prime Body, he summoned his major grotto heaven without a second word. A Buddhist light shone from within and auspicious clouds filled the skies, enveloping the Martial Dao Prime Body. Thereafter, Heavenly King Luo Shen assumed a lotus position and hovered in midair. He held prayer beads in his hands and chanted Buddhist dermic incantations softly. The dermic incantations turned into golden runes that entered the major grotto heaven behind him. Before long, Heavenly King Luo Shen fiddled with the prayer beads in his hands faster and faster, and a layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. A moment later, he suddenly stood up. A figure shrouded in flames flew out from the major grotto heaven that was filled with Buddhist light behind him. It was Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. It was not just the grotto heavens of the immortal sects, even the grotto heavens of the Buddhist monasteries could not refine the Martial Dao Prime Body. Fufu. The Martial Dao Prime Body chuckled and surveyed his surroundings. His gaze swept past the faces of Immortal King Qin Yang and the others, and he mocked, "Is that all there is to the supreme immortal kings of the two domains? In my opinion, there's no need for you guys to hold the Nine Firmament meet again in the future. It'll just be a joke." Fiend, how brazen. How arrogant. The immortal kings were enraged. Even the 20-odd supreme immortal kings of the two domains revealed sinister killing intent. At the immortal king realm, one was almost at the peak of the upper world and could rule over millions of living beings. They could not withstand any humiliation or provocation. Furthermore, cultivators of both domains were gathered here and everyone was watching. If they could not suppress Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain, the immortal kings of the two domains would probably become jokes of the upper world after today. There were not many immortal kings who could remain calm. Immortal Queen Ling Long could tell that the words of the Martial Dao Prime Body were clearly meant to anger many immortal kings present, including the supreme immortal kings. However, she truly could not figure out the meaning behind the actions of the Martial Dao Prime Body. She could only guess the consequences of the actions of the Martial Dao Prime Body. Initially, for the sake of their dignity, the supreme immortal kings present were embarrassed to join forces against a supreme perfected fiend. Now that they were provoked by the Martial Dao Prime Body, there was a high chance that the 20-odd supreme immortal kings would join forces to suppress the Martial Dao Prime Body in their rage. Don't waste your breath on him. Immortal King Long Night grit his teeth and said, "This person's dermic Dao is strange. Let's release our major grotto heavens and join forces to destroy him." Exactly. Heavenly King Luo Shen said in a deep voice, "Since I can't devour and refine this fiend, I can only crush his body and bloodline to purify him forcefully. Come on, let's see how much longer this fiend can last against our combined forces." Immortal King Qin Yang expressed his stance as well. In the blink of an eye, 19 supreme immortal kings stood out and surrounded the Martial Dao Prime Body. The 19 supreme immortal kings released their major grotto heavens in unison. Instantly, the world changed. On the battlefield, 19 major grotto heavens with different dermic daos appeared and crushed towards the Martial Dao Prime Body with a terrifying aura. Immortal Queen Ling Long's heart skipped a beat and she stood up instinctively. Under such circumstances, even if she was in his position, she would not be able to escape. The 19 major grotto heavens had already sealed all exits in all directions. Desolate Marshal might be able to avoid being devoured and refined by a grotto heaven due to some strange dermic Tao, but there was no way he could defend against the suppression of 19 major grotto heavens. Immortal Queen Ling Long had just seen it clearly. Although Desolate Marshal was not refined by Immortal King Long Night and Heavenly King Luotian's grotto heavens, he suffered quite a blow and his aura became much weaker. If the 19 major grotto heavens crushed over at the same time, there was only a single outcome for Desolate Marshal: his body and essence spirit would be destroyed. Chapter 26:18, Chapter 26:18, Success. Chapter 26:18, Success. On the peak of the Builder Tree. Although Su Zimo looked calm, he was actually extremely nervous internally. Although the Green Lotus True Body was not involved and would not be implicated, the choice of the Martial Dao Prime Body meant that the Martial Dao Prime Body would cease to exist if he failed. Even so, it was worth the risk for the Martial Dao Prime Body to give it a shot. This choice was extremely important and would determine the future of the Martial Dao Prime Body. It was a path that no one could replicate. Although the Green Lotus True Body was in Heaven and Earth Academy, the inexplicable sense of danger had always existed. As his cultivation realm deepened and his combat strength became stronger, the sense of danger did not disappear. Instead, it intensified. Su Zimo needed the Martial Dao Prime Body to advance further and grow to a sufficiently strong level. On the one hand, the Martial Dao Prime Body could better protect Tianhuang's sect if he was stronger. On the other hand, if the Green Lotus True Body encountered any irreconcilable danger in the future, the Martial Dao Prime Body could become a way out for the Green Lotus True Body. There was also one more thing. The Martial Dao Prime Body intended to head to the Great Wilderness. If he was only at the true martial realm, he was still lacking in terms of strength. He had to become stronger so that he had the confidence and foundation to look for Dayu. He had to be qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with her. Beneath the Builder Tree. The 19 Supremes supported their major grotto heavens and trapped the Martial Dao Prime Body within. They launched their final attacks and crushed and collided continuously. The 19 major grotto heavens contained 19 different dermic Daos and tempered the Martial Dao Prime Body continuously, letting out jarring sounds. The true Martial Dao Body seemed like it could fall apart at any moment. At that time, the bones and flesh of the Martial Dao Prime Body would be crushed into dust. In less than a few breaths, the Martial Dao Prime Body could not hold on any longer. If it was just one or two major grotto heavens, he could still fight them temporarily with his bloodline phenomenon and the heaven and earth furnace. But now that the 19 major grotto heavens were gathered with dermic Dao surging, even the true Martial Dao Body could not defend against it. Poof! 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 Blood began to fill the body of the Martial Dao Prime Body and the true Martial Dao Body could not withstand the pressure. Under the suppression of the 19 major grotto heavens, his skin split, bones snapped, organs vibrated and his Dao body was filled with a scarlet blood mist. Cough, cough, cough. The Martial Dao Prime Body coughed out large mouthfuls of blood as well. In reality, the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings had yet to use their full strength. At their cultivation realm, every single one of them had experienced countless life and death situations and had seen too many storms. They were extremely cautious. Although they attacked to suppress Desolate Marshal, most of their attention was focused in the direction of the Fiend domain, afraid that anything could happen. Desolate Marshal's action looked reckless on the surface. They believed that he must have other trump cards up his sleeves to explain his baffling actions. The group of Supreme Immortal Kings were worried that Emperor Bo Sun would be provoked if they suppressed Desolate Marshal. Of the 20-odd Supreme Immortal Kings, a few of them did not participate because they had such considerations as well. However, as time passed by, although the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings had already severely injured Desolate Marshal, the direction of the Fiend domain was still calm without any signs of Fiend cultivators and everyone gradually relaxed. So, that's all to the power of Supreme Immortal Kings? Right then, the weak voice of the martial Tao prime body sounded. Desolate Marshal, you're still in the mood to mock us even now. You truly don't know what's good for you. Immortal King. Immortal King Long Night sneered and said in a deep voice, everyone, don't worry. Attack with all your might and kill this fiend. Destroy his essence, spirit and soul. That's right. Although Heavenly King Luo Shen was from the Buddhist monasteries, he was also murderous at the moment. The Hell Suppression Tripod would only become ownerless once more after Desolate Marshal was completely destroyed. That was the only way he could get his hands on it. Kill. The Supreme Immortal Kings hollered and channeled the Dharmic Daos of the Grotto Heavens with all their might. The power of the Grotto Heavens surged and suppressed the Martial Tao Prime Body. This time round, the Martial Tao Prime Body could no longer hold on. Bang! Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the true Martial Tao body exploded and his flesh was destroyed. A tremendous power tore through the void and a large area of the void caved in, forming a dark black hole. The terrifying power released by the 19 major Grotto Heavens not only destroyed the Martial Tao Prime body's physical body and essence spirit, it even penetrated a large void. The world returned to normal. The cultivators around the builder tree were dumbfounded as well with shocked expressions. The Fiend Domain's Desolate Marshal caused such a huge commotion at the 9 Firmament meet. He had just suppressed the paragons of the 2 ranking lists, killed the Supreme Arhat and defeated 7 Immortal Kings. He was fearless and arrogant. And now, he ended up in such a state where he was killed by the combined forces of 19 Supreme Immortal Kings without a corpse left. Not far away, Mo Qing seemed to have lost her soul when she saw that. Her face turned pale and her body swayed slightly, almost falling to the side. Thankfully, Yunzhu reacted in time and supported her hurriedly. Sigh. Yunzhu sighed gently and turned back to look in the direction of Su Zimo at the peak of the builder tree. This was Su Zimo's secret and she could not say it explicitly, nor did she know how to console him. He died just like that? Jun Yu had a conflicted expression and a lost look in her eyes. Her interaction with Desolate Marshal was brief and they only had a short exchange of blows. However, the impression left behind by Desolate Marshal was way too deep. Up till this point of her cultivation, Desolate Marshal was the first and only person who gave her the notion that she was helpless to resist. The existence of Desolate Marshal even made her feel despair. No matter how she cultivated, she would not be able to catch up to that person. Jun Yu did not have much prejudice towards the Fiend Domain and Fiend cultivators. She felt a deep sense of pity for Desolate Marshal's death. Mother, Desolate Marshal, died just like that? Lin Luo could not believe it and a look of sadness flashed through her eyes. Back when the siblings were trapped in Langfeng City, it was because of the appearance of Desolate Marshal that the two of them managed to escape. No matter where Desolate Marshal came from, he was their savior. Immortal Queen Ling Long sighed and shook her head gently, murmuring, should be dead. Even though Immortal Queen Ling Long could peer through the heavenly secrets, she could not figure out how Desolate Marshal could survive against the suppression of 19 major Grotto Heavens. Instinctively, she looked in the direction of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain Su Zimo. At the same time, on the side of the Fiend Domain, Feng Cantian, Yan Beichen, Ming Zhen and Ji Yaoshua looked towards Su Zimo. Everyone who knew Desolate Marshal's true identity wanted an answer. Or rather, they were searching for a sliver of hope. At that moment, Su Zimo was staring fixedly at the dark void beneath the builder tree. His gaze intensified and a smile even appeared on his face. Success. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators around, Su Zimo would have reared his head and howled. After the Martial Tao Prime Body's body and essence spirit were destroyed by the 19 major Grotto Heavens, Su Zimo indeed lost the connection to the Martial Tao Prime Body. However, it was only momentary. In just a few breaths, he sensed the aura of the Martial Tao Prime Body once more. He could sense that the aura of the Martial Tao Prime Body was initially weak. However, it expanded rapidly and became stronger at an unimaginable speed. An even more terrifying Desolate Marshal was about to reappear. Chapter 26:19, Chapter 26:19, Tao Body and Tao Fruit. Chapter 26:19, Tao Body and Tao Fruit. While the martial Tao prime body was in seclusion in Avicii, he did not stop deducing the dharmic formulation of the martial Tao. When he was about to come out of seclusion, he had already comprehended the key points and was only missing some details and opportunities. In other words, it was unrealistic for the martial Tao prime body to advance to the next realm of the martial Tao within a short period of time. However, at the same time, because he had smelted and browsed through too many ancient books and sutras, another thought flashed through the mind of the martial Tao prime body. Perhaps before he entered the next realm of the martial Tao, he could make use of another method to condense his grotto heaven first and become a fiend king. The appearance of the martial Tao prime body was a variable that was beyond the 3 realms and 5 elements. The prime body's existence originated from the martial Tao fruit. Ordinary Tao fruits condensed the dharmic Tao of cultivators and was the essence of their cultivation. There were countless inheritance secret skills and insights within. As for the martial Tao fruit, it condensed the essence of the martial Tao. It was not only a noble augmentation, it also contained the will of the martial Tao and the faith of all living beings. It was only through chance and the combination of various powers that a Tao fruit with life force was born. This was unprecedented and could not be replicated. Up till this point of his cultivation, the prime body had fused the martial Tao dharmic formulation into his bones and flesh at the true martial realm to temper the true martial Tao body. However, in reality, the true martial Tao body was also a Tao fruit. The Tao body was the Tao fruit and vice versa, the two were one. The martial Tao prime body was the only one throughout history to be in such a situation. It was recorded in the dharmic formulation of many inheritances that the prerequisite for condensing a grotto heaven was to shatter the Tao fruit. Through the tremendous power released by the shattering of the Tao fruit, the void outside the body would be smashed, creating a chamber that could connect to the heavens and the 3 realms. That was the grotto heaven. The process was extremely dangerous. If the power accumulated after the Tao fruit was shattered was insufficient, and one could not support a grotto heaven, it would mean that the breakthrough had failed. They would either die or settle for second best and reach the half-step grotto heaven realm. Although their lifespans would increase, they would never be able to advance to the grotto heaven realm. The idea of the martial Tao prime body was to shatter the true martial Tao body. The true martial Tao body was the fruit of the martial Tao. The shattering of the true martial Tao body meant that the Tao fruit would be shattered. At the same time, there was a chance that a chamber could be opened up and a grotto heaven could be condensed. This grotto heaven would originate from the martial Tao prime body, but the martial Tao prime body was a variable to begin with. In other words, if this grotto heaven was born, there was a high chance that it would exist beyond the 3 realms and 5 elements, turning into a variant grotto heaven. That thought was way too terrifying. Even if an ordinary Tao fruit was shattered, the process of breaking through to the grotto heaven realm was extremely dangerous. For a variable like the martial Tao prime body, it was unknown if the true martial Tao body would truly break through to the grotto heaven realm after shattering just like a Tao fruit. If he failed, the martial Tao prime body would not even have the chance to settle for second best and enter the half-step grotto heaven realm. For ordinary perfected immortals to advance to the grotto heaven realm, they merely had to shatter their Tao fruits. However, what the martial Tao prime body had to shatter was the true martial Tao body that he had condensed with his dharmic Tao. If he failed, his essence, spirit and soul would be destroyed. Furthermore, his true martial Tao body had already been cultivated to the perfected stage, and every single move he made could even break through the minor grotto heavens of ordinary immortal kings. Even ordinary grotto heaven spirit treasures could not injure his body. How could such a true martial Tao body be shattered? It was an idea fraught with difficulties and a slim chance of survival. After pondering for a long time, the martial Tao prime body decided to take the risk. Although it was a risk, he was not unprepared. First, he could only rely on external forces to break through the true martial Tao body. Yet, the external force could not be too strong. If an emperor were to release the power of the world and destroy the true martial Tao body, even his dharmic Tao would be destroyed and refined. There was no need to talk about condensing a grotto heaven. He would be killed into nothingness before anything could be formed. The safest option was for supreme immortal kings to make use of the power of their major grotto heavens to destroy the true martial Tao body bit by bit. Furthermore, one supreme immortal king was not enough. There had to be at least 10 of them. Second, after the true martial Tao body was shattered, there was actually still a sliver of hope of revival. The bloodline of the true martial Tao body contained the blood of the dragon phoenix. Therefore, the body of the martial Tao prime body contained the final innate divine power of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the power of the phoenix nirvana. However, it was far from enough if he was merely relying on this innate divine power alone. The phoenix nirvana had a 90% chance of failure to begin with. Furthermore, this innate divine power might not be able to unleash its full potential against the suppression of major grotto heavens. Third and most importantly, the trajectory of his deduction had to be correct. The true martial Tao body had to be the Tao fruit such that the destruction of the Tao body could truly shatter the void and condense a grotto heaven. All in all, the 9 firmament meet was the best opportunity for the martial Tao prime body to give this idea a shot. There were enough supreme immortal kings at the 9 firmament meet. Furthermore, the venue of the 9 firmament meet was near the builder tree. Once a huge battle broke out and his true martial Tao body was shattered to evolve into a grotto heaven, this grotto heaven could devour and absorb the life force of the builder tree to extend his life. Beneath the builder tree, Immortal King Qin Yang and the other 18 supreme immortal kings observed the fiend domain for any activity after they destroyed Desolate Martial's body and essence spirit. They only heaved a sigh of relief when they did not find anything unusual. Immortal King Long Night sneered, "Desolate Martial is so arrogant that I thought he had something up his sleeves. To think that he's just an idiot who doesn't know his place. Foo-foo." Immortal King Qin Yang chuckled. This lad went on a massacre in the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain before escaping back to Avicii. He really thinks that he can do whatever he wants just because he has the Hell Suppression Tripod. He didn't know that once we joined forces to seal the void, his Hell Suppression Tripod would end up as a display piece. At the mention of the Hell Suppression Tripod, the gazes of the Supreme Immortal Kings landed near the pierced void where the Hell Suppression Tripod hovered. Amitabha. Heavenly King Luoshan chanted his Buddhist proclamation softly and made a move first, arriving before the Hell Suppression Tripod to snatch it away. Monk Luoshan, aren't you way too anxious? Immortal King Qin Yang and the others made a move one after another as well. The 19 major grotto heavens were propped up once more and collided in midair. Hold on. Stop first. Suddenly, Heavenly King Luoshan frowned and hollered. Why? What are you up to, monk? Immortal King Qi Ping sneered, the void here has already been sealed. No one can dream of leaving until we resolve the matter of the Hell Suppression Tripod. Heavenly King Luoshan said hurriedly, there's something strange about this Hell Suppression Tripod. I can't lift it. How is that possible? In a flash, Immortal King Long Night arrived beside the Hell Suppression Tripod and reached out to grab it. The Hell Suppression Tripod did not budge at all, as though it was sucked in by the dark black hole behind it. It was only at that moment that the Immortal Kings noticed something unusual. Why hasn't this void healed after so long? Immortal King Qin Yang narrowed his eyes and asked. Although a fight between immortal kings could shatter the void, due to the circulation of heaven and earth laws, the void would recover quickly and recover to its original state. But now, the pitch-black void had yet to recover. The immortal kings glared at the dark black hole not far away and their gazes froze. Suddenly, their expressions changed. In the depths of the black hole, a figure appeared faintly, as though it was one with the black hole. You'll have to ask for my permission if you want to snatch my tripod. A shocking voice sounded from the black hole. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.